It is late, and the world outside has fallen into a quiet hum, but inside, a storm rages. You are lying in the dark, feeling the weight of the blanket, listening to the rhythm of your own heart, yet you are anything but at rest. Your mind is a relentless narrator, replaying scenes from the day, rehearsing conversations for tomorrow, cataloging worries, regrets, and an endless list of tasks. A phone on the nightstand occasionally glows with a silent notification, a tiny pulse from a world that never sleeps, a world that demands your constant attention, your energy, your engagement. This feeling, this sense of being adrift in a sea of your own thoughts, is not a personal failing. It is not a sign that you are broken. It is perhaps the most common, shared experience of our modern age. We are living in a storm of information, of expectation, of endless striving. We are taught to seek happiness outside of ourselves, in the next achievement, the next purchase, the next relationship, the next validation. We are driven by a deep and profound thirst, a feeling that if we could just get that one more thing, if we could just fix that one last problem, then we would finally feel whole, finally feel at peace. But the cup never seems to stay full. The satisfaction is fleeting, and the thirst always returns, leaving us feeling drained, anxious, and perpetually dissatisfied. We try to outrun the noise, to distract ourselves, to numb the unease, but the storm is not outside of us. The storm is within. What if there was another way, not a way to escape the world, but a way to find a quiet center within it? Not another thing to achieve, but a way of being to uncover. For thousands of years, there has existed a path, a gentle and profound investigation into the nature of the human mind. It is not a religion in the way many in the West might think of it, with dogmas to be believed, but rather an ancient science of the mind, a practical set of tools and insights designed to help us understand the very source of our suffering and to reveal the peace that is our birthright. This is an invitation to walk that path, an invitation to turn inward, not with judgment, but with a gentle curiosity. It is a journey to meet your own mind with compassion, to understand its habits, and to slowly, gently discover the vast, silent, and spacious awareness that lies just beneath the surface of the storm. It is a path to find the stillness that is not created, but is simply remembered, a quiet space that has been here all along, waiting for you to come home. Let us begin by turning our attention inward to the space behind our eyes, the theater of the mind. And let us listen with a gentle curiosity to what we find there. For most of us, what we find is not silence. What we find is a near constant stream of internal chatter, a voice that never seems to rest. This is the unceasing noise, the background static of our lives. It has been called the monkey mind, and it is a powerful metaphor. Imagine a monkey, restless and agitated, swinging frantically from one tree branch to another. It grabs a branch of the past, a memory of something you said at a meeting, and it replays it over and over, analyzing every word, cringing at the awkwardness. Then, before you can even take a breath, it swings to a branch of the future, a worry about an upcoming bill, a fear of a difficult conversation you must have. From there, it leaps to a random thought about a movie you once saw, then to a sudden pang of hunger, then to a snippet of a song you heard on the radio, then back to a judgment about your appearance. It never stays still. It is chaotic, reactive, and exhausting. This mental monologue is so constant, so pervasive, that most of the time we don't even notice it's happening. It is the water we swim in. We have become fused with this narrator, believing that its voice is our own, that its anxieties are our identity. We think we are the worrier, we are the planner, we are the critic. This inner voice has many roles. Sometimes it is the project manager, running through endless to-do lists, optimizing, scheduling, organizing. Even when we are supposed to be resting, sitting in a park or lying on a beach, the project manager is busy planning the next moment, the next hour, the next week, robbing the present moment of its vitality. Other times, this voice is the inner critic, a harsh and unforgiving judge. It compares you to others, points out your flaws, reminds you of your past failures, and whispers that you are not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy. This voice is often the loudest in the choir, and its judgments can feel as sharp and as real as any physical wound. The constant activity of this monkey mind is not a benign process. It consumes an enormous amount of our life force, our vital energy. Think of a computer with too many programs running in the background. It becomes slow, it overheats, and it is prone to crashing. Our mind is much the same. The endless loop of worry and planning, of rehashing the past and fearing the future, keeps our nervous system in a low-grade, perpetual state of fight or flight. It releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline into our bloodstream, tensing our muscles, quickening our breath, and preparing us for a danger that exists only in our thoughts. Is it any wonder we feel so tired? Is it any wonder we feel so drained, so scattered, so overwhelmed? We are trying to live our lives while simultaneously running a relentless, 24-hour-a-day simulation of everything that could possibly go wrong. There is a timeless story that speaks to this condition. A man was once walking through a field, and he became terrified by the sound of his own footsteps behind him. Thump, thump, thump. He was also tormented by the sight of his own shadow, which clung to him and mimicked his every move. Believing he was being chased by some terrible monster, he decided he had to escape, so he began to run. But the faster he ran, the louder and more frequent the thumping of his feet became, and the more faithfully his shadow kept pace. He was convinced the monster was gaining on him. He ran faster and faster, his heart pounding in his chest, his lungs burning, never once looking back to see what was truly there. He ran until he could run no more, until he collapsed onto the earth, utterly exhausted, and died. He never understood that if he had simply stopped running, if he had just found the shade of a large, welcoming tree and sat down to rest, the footsteps would have ceased and his shadow would have quietly disappeared beside him. We are that man. Our thoughts are the footsteps. Our anxieties are the shadow. We believe the constant noise in our head is a threat we must escape, and so we run. We run by distracting ourselves with endless entertainment, scrolling through social media feeds for hours. We run by staying busy, packing our schedules so tightly that there is not a single moment for a quiet thought to arise. We run by numbing ourselves with food, with drink, with work. We try to outrun the narrator in our own mind, but just like the man in the story, our very effort to escape is what perpetuates the problem. The more we try to push thoughts away, the more forcefully they return. The more we struggle against our anxiety, the more powerful it seems to become. We are exhausting ourselves in a futile attempt to run away from our own mind. The profound wisdom of this story, and the first great liberation on this path, is the realization that the solution is not to run faster. The solution is to stop, to simply and gently stop. This does not mean stopping our thoughts. Forcing the mind to be silent is just another form of running, another act of struggle. Stopping means ceasing the struggle. It means changing our relationship to the noise. And this begins with a radical and deeply transformative insight. You are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are events in your mind, but they are not the totality of who you are. The voice of the critic, the worrier, the planner, that is not you. It is simply the activity of an untrained mind. Think of it this way. You are the sky, vast, open, and clear. Your thoughts, emotions, and sensations are the weather. Sometimes the sky is filled with dark, heavy storm clouds. Sometimes it is filled with light, wispy clouds. Sometimes there is thunder and lightning, and sometimes it is perfectly clear and blue. But through it all, the sky itself is never harmed by the weather. The storm does not stain the sky. The clouds do not define the sky. The sky is the silent, spacious container that allows all weather to arise, to be present, and to pass away. You are that sky. Your awareness is that sky. The monkey mind is just a particularly turbulent weather pattern. For years, we have believed we are the storm. The first step toward peace is to realize we are the sky that holds the storm. This realization leads to the first and most practical step you can take right now in this very moment. It is the simple act of acknowledgement without judgment. As you listen to the narrator in your mind, you simply notice it. You don't have to engage with it. You don't have to believe its stories. And most importantly, you don't have to judge yourself for having the thoughts. When a wave of worry arises, instead of being swept away by it, you can simply note, internally, there is worry. When the inner critic begins its tirade, you can observe it and think, there is the voice of judgment. You are not endorsing the thought, and you are not condemning it. You are simply recognizing it for what it is, a thought, a pattern of energy, a cloud passing through the sky of your awareness. This is the act of stepping into the shade of the tree. It is the moment we stop running, and for the first time, turn to look directly at that which we have been fleeing. We don't fight it. We don't resist it. We simply allow it to be there, and we rest in the awareness that is watching it. So now, we have identified the unceasing noise. We have named the monkey mind and seen how its frantic activity drains our energy and creates a constant state of unease. We have heard the story of the man who ran from himself, and we have understood that our struggle is the source of our suffering. And we have discovered the first key to freedom, the realization that we are the sky, not the clouds, and that our first task is simply to notice the weather of our mind without judgment. This is the foundation. This is where the path begins. Now that we have acknowledged this storm of thoughts, this inner noise, we must look deeper. We must ask, where does this noise truly come from? What are its fundamental origins? To find a true and lasting peace, we must move beyond the symptoms and begin to diagnose the root cause of our profound and shared restlessness. Having acknowledged the unceasing noise within our minds, we take the next step on this path of inquiry. A wise physician, when presented with a patient's symptoms, does not immediately prescribe a cure. First, they must make an accurate diagnosis. In the same way, the Buddhist path does not begin with a promise of immediate relief, but with a clear, courageous, and compassionate diagnosis of the human condition. This diagnosis is the first of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of dukkha. This ancient Pali word, dukkha, is often translated into English as suffering, and this single translation has been the source of much misunderstanding. It can make the path sound morbid, pessimistic, and focused only on the negative aspects of life. But the meaning of dukkha is far more subtle, more nuanced, and ultimately more universally applicable than the word suffering suggests. A more helpful translation of dukkha might be unsatisfactoriness, stress, unease, or a fundamental friction. It is the pervasive sense that things are not quite right. It is the gap between the way things are and the way we want them to be. It is the subtle but persistent feeling of being incomplete, the background hum of anxiety that so often underlies our daily lives. To understand the truth of dukkha is not to deny that joy, happiness, and pleasure exist. They most certainly do. The path of the Buddha is not one of denial. Rather, it is to recognize with gentle clarity that all of our experiences, both pleasant and unpleasant, are tinged with this quality of unsatisfactoriness. To acknowledge dukkha is an act of profound honesty and self-compassion. It is to look at your own life, your own mind, and say, yes, this feeling of stress, this restlessness, this sense of striving and never quite arriving, this is real. It is not just my imagination. It is a fundamental part of this human experience. In naming it, you realize you are not alone. This is not your personal failure. It is our shared inheritance. To understand it more deeply, we can look at dukkha in three distinct forms, each one more subtle than the last. The first is what we can call the dukkha of pain, or dukkha dukkha. This is the most obvious and easily recognizable form of unsatisfactoriness. It is the raw, undeniable pain of life. It is the headache that throbs in your temples, the grief that constricts your chest at the loss of a loved one, the sharp sting of betrayal, the anxiety of a frightening medical diagnosis, the frustration of failure, the loneliness of rejection. It is the pain of stubbing your toe, the discomfort of being sick, the despair of seeing injustice in the world. This is the ouch of life, the overt suffering that no one can escape, regardless of their wealth, status, or fortune. When we speak of suffering, this is typically what we mean, and the Buddha acknowledged this reality without flinching. The second form is more subtle, and it strikes at the very heart of our search for happiness. It is called the dukkha of change, or viparinama dukkha. This is the unsatisfactoriness inherent in our pleasant experiences. This seems like a contradiction, but let us look closely. Think of a moment of pure joy, watching a breathtakingly beautiful sunset, tasting a delicious meal, embracing a person you love, receiving a long-awaited piece of good news. These moments are wonderful, yet within them, if we are honest, we can often detect a subtle undercurrent of anxiety. It is the anxiety that this moment will end. The sun will sink below the horizon. The meal will be finished. The embrace will break. The thrill of the good news will fade. We try to cling to these pleasant experiences, to hold on to them, to make them permanent. And in this very act of clinging, we create stress. We cannot fully enjoy the beauty of the sunset because a part of our mind is already mourning its passing. The happiness is real, but it is fragile, temporary, and its eventual disappearance is a form of suffering. This is the bittersweet nature of our joy. It is the sadness of Sunday evening when the freedom of the weekend begins to slip away. It is the feeling of letdown after a holiday or a celebration. All happy things must change, and this inevitable change is a source of our deep, underlying unease. The third form is the deepest and most pervasive. It is called the dukkha of conditioned existence, or sankhara dukkha. This is the background static of our lives. It is a fundamental unsatisfactoriness that is woven into the very fabric of our being, simply because we are conditioned, dependent, and impermanent creatures. It is the subtle stress of having a body that needs to be fed, rested, and protected, a body that ages and is vulnerable to sickness. It is the unease of having a mind that is so often a whirlwind of uncontrollable thoughts and emotions, as we have already seen. It is the general friction of being a self in a world that doesn't always conform to our wishes. Even on a perfectly fine day, when there is no obvious pain and no great joy is fading, there can still be this low-grade hum of anxiety, a sense of vague agitation or boredom, a feeling that something is missing. This is sankhara dukkha. It is the stress of simply maintaining our existence from one moment to the next. There is a simple story that illustrates this truth beautifully. Imagine you possess a magnificent cup. It is exquisitely crafted, adorned with beautiful patterns, and feels wonderful in your hands. But, unknown to you at first, it has a tiny, almost imperceptible crack at its base. Now, your life's goal becomes to keep this cup full of the pure water of happiness. You pour in the water of a successful career. For a moment, the cup feels full, but soon you notice the water level has dropped. The initial satisfaction has leaked away, so you think, I need better water. You pour in the water of a passionate romance, and again, for a while, the cup is full and brimming. But inevitably, through the small frictions and disagreements of life, the water level seeps down once more. You try to fill it with the water of material possessions, a new car, a beautiful home. You pour in the water of travel, of exciting experiences, of praise from others. Each time there is a temporary feeling of fullness, a moment of relief, but every time the water leaks out through that tiny hairline crack, and you are left thirsty, holding a cup that is not quite full, convinced that you just need to find more water, better water, a different kind of water to pour in. You spend your life focused on the water, never thinking to examine the nature of the cup itself. The Buddha's great insight was to shift the focus from the water to the cup. The water represents all the changing experiences of our lives, both pleasant and unpleasant. The cup represents our conditioned existence, our very self. And the crack, that tiny leak, is the inherent nature of that existence. It is dukkha. It is the truth that because our lives, our bodies, our minds, and all our experiences are impermanent and conditioned, they can never provide a lasting, ultimate, or stable satisfaction. The very vessel we are trying to fill is, by its nature, leaky. To see this is not to be pessimistic. It is to be a realist. It is an act of profound liberation. It means we can stop the frantic, exhausting, and ultimately futile task of trying to permanently fill a leaky cup. We can stop blaming the water, and we can stop blaming ourselves for failing to keep it full. We can, for the first time, look at the situation with clear eyes and say, "Ah, I see. The problem is not with the water. The problem is with the cup." This acknowledgement is the end of a very old and very tiring game. It is the end of chasing after fleeting pleasures and running from fleeting pains in the hope of finding a permanent state of satisfaction that can never be found in the changing conditions of the world. Acknowledging the reality of dukkha, this fundamental unsatisfactoriness, is not the end of the journey. It is the brave and necessary beginning. A skilled physician, having diagnosed the illness, does not walk away. They proceed to the next crucial step, identifying its cause. If this unease, this stress, this leaky cup is the universal condition, then what is it that creates it? What is the source of this deep and persistent thirst? This question leads us directly to the heart of our inner turmoil and to the second noble truth. Having looked with courage at the diagnosis of our shared condition, the truth of dukkha, we must now follow the method of the wise physician and ask the next logical question: what is its cause? If our lives are characterized by this underlying friction, this sense of a leaky cup that can never be filled, where does the leak come from? If the unceasing noise of the monkey mind is the symptom, what is the engine that drives it? The Buddha's answer to this question forms the second noble truth, the truth of samudaya, which means the origin or the arising of our unsatisfactoriness. The answer is at once profoundly simple and deeply challenging. The origin of our unrest is a force called tanha. Tanha is a Pali word that translates literally as thirst. It is a perfect metaphor. It is not a gentle wanting or a simple preference. Tanha is a deep, primal, and compulsive craving. It's the desperate thirst of a person lost in the desert, a thirst that hijacks the mind and directs all of its actions toward the single goal of finding water. This is the energy that fuels our restless striving. It is the engine of the monkey mind, the force that causes it to swing frantically from branch to branch, always seeking something to satisfy its deep inner craving. This thirst is not a monolithic force. It manifests in our lives in three distinct ways. The first and most obvious is the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving for agreeable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and physical sensations. In our modern world, this thirst is amplified and exploited at every turn. It is the craving for the taste of rich food, the desire for the latest smartphone with its sleek design, the longing to hear praise from our peers, the compulsion to binge-watch another series, the endless scrolling through social media feeds in search of the next interesting image, or validating like, "These things are not inherently bad. A beautiful sunset is not bad. A delicious meal is not bad." The problem, the source of dukkha, is not the pleasure itself, but the thirst for it. It is the clinging, the attachment, and the mistaken belief that these fleeting sensory experiences can provide a deep and lasting happiness. When we get what we want, we are temporarily satisfied, but then a new thirst arises, or we become anxious about losing the pleasure we have just gained. When we don't get what we want, we suffer from frustration and envy. We become like a person trying to quench a deep thirst by drinking salt water. The act seems to promise relief, but it only makes the thirst more intense. The second form of this thirst is more subtle, and it speaks to our very sense of self. It is the thirst for existence, or the thirst for becoming. This is the deep-seated craving to be someone, to have a solid, secure, and admirable identity. It is the relentless drive to build and maintain a story about ourselves. This thirst fuels our ambition, our desire for fame, wealth, status, and power. But it also fuels more subtle desires, like the craving to be seen as a good person, a competent professional, an attractive partner, a perfect parent. It is the urge to leave a mark, to create a legacy, to somehow achieve permanence in a world that is fundamentally impermanent. This thirst for becoming is what makes us so sensitive to criticism and so hungry for praise. An insult is not just an unpleasant sound, it is an attack on the very structure of the self we have so carefully constructed. A compliment is not just a kind word, it is a validation that our constructed self is real and valuable. This constant effort to prop up, defend, and enhance our identity is a source of immense and chronic stress, because we are trying to make something solid and permanent out of a process that is, by its nature, fluid, dependent, and constantly in flux. The third form of thirst is the flip side of the first two. It is the thirst for non-existence or aversion. This is the craving for an unpleasant experience to go away. It is the desperate wish to not feel what we are feeling. When anxiety arises, we crave for it to disappear. When we feel grief, we want to numb it or push it away. When we are bored, we frantically seek distraction. This aversion is just as active and energetic as grasping. Grasping for pleasure and pushing away pain are two sides of the same restless coin. Whether we are chasing a desired outcome or running from a feared one, we are still caught in the same cycle of reactivity. We believe that our peace depends on arranging the external world and our internal states to perfectly match our preferences. We are constantly trying to control the uncontrollable, to hold back the ocean of experience with a broom, and this struggle, this resistance to what is a primary source of our friction and exhaustion. This relentless thirst, in all its forms, leads directly to a state of being called upadana, which means clinging or attachment. The thirst is the initial impulse, the desire that arises. The clinging is when we latch on, when we grasp it with a closed fist and refuse to let go. This is perfectly illustrated by a story of how hunters are said to have trapped monkeys in the jungles of India. A hunter would take a coconut, hollow it out, and cut a hole in it just large enough for a monkey's open hand to pass through. The hunter would then put some sweet nuts or rice inside the coconut and chain it to a stake. A monkey, drawn by the smell, would come along, slip its open hand into the coconut, and grasp the food inside. In that moment, its open hand becomes a clenched fist. When the hunters approach, the monkey naturally panics and tries to pull its hand out, but the hole is too small for its closed fist to pass through. The monkey shrieks and pulls, struggles and fights, but it cannot get free. It never occurs to the monkey that the solution is incredibly simple. All it has to do is open its hand, let go of the nuts, and it would be free to scamper away. But its craving, its clinging to the prize, is so strong that it becomes its own prison. It is captured not by the hunter's chain, but by the trap of its own mind. We are that monkey. The nuts and the coconut are all the things we cling to, our possessions, our status, our ideas about who we are, our beliefs, our youth, our loved ones, our moments of pleasure. We grasp them tightly, believing they are the source of our security and happiness. And the world, like the hunters, inevitably approaches with the reality of change, loss, and impermanence. And we struggle, we pull against reality, refusing to let go, and in doing so, we create our own suffering. Our freedom is always available to us in the simple yet profound act of unclenching our fist. So why don't we let go? Why does the monkey not simply open its hand? The deepest root of this thirst, the soil in which it grows, is a state the Buddha called avidya, or ignorance. This is not ignorance in the sense of being stupid or uneducated. It is a fundamental misperception of reality. We don't let go of the nuts because we are ignorant of the truth. We operate under the delusion that these fleeting things can give us lasting happiness. We are ignorant of the truth of impermanence, anicca, failing to see that everything we grasp is bound to change and slip through our fingers. And most profoundly, we are ignorant of the truth of non-self, anatta, the truth that there is no fixed, solid, separate monkey self that needs to possess those nuts in the first place. This fundamental ignorance is what fuels the thirst, and the thirst is what causes us to cling. And the clinging is what creates the friction and unsatisfactoriness of dukkha. Seeing this is the most hopeful discovery we can make. If our suffering were caused by an external agent, by the state of the world, by other people, or by random fate, we would be helpless victims, forever at the mercy of forces beyond our control. But the second noble truth tells us that the cause of our suffering is internal. It arises from our own mind, from our own habits of craving and clinging, which are themselves rooted in a misunderstanding of reality. And if the cause is internal, then the solution must be internal as well. The power to cease our suffering lies within our own hands. Just as the monkey holds the key to its own freedom, so do we. We can learn to see our thirst for what it is. We can learn to loosen our grip. The diagnosis has been made, and the cause has been identified. This means that a cure is not only possible, it is a natural consequence of this understanding. What then is the prognosis? Is it possible to truly quench this thirst? Is there a state of being that is free from this frantic grasping and pushing away? This hopeful question leads us directly to the promise of peace, the third noble truth. We have walked a path of unflinching honesty. We have looked directly at the symptom, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of our lives, which we have called dukkha. We have also looked directly at its cause, the relentless, driving thirst of the mind, which we have called tanha. Standing here, with this diagnosis and its origin, it would be easy to fall into despair. It can feel like a heavy burden to realize that life is inherently challenging, and that the source of this challenge lies within the very habits of our own mind. If the story ended here, it would be a tragedy. It would be a physician who tells a patient, "You have a serious illness, and it is being caused by the way you live," and then simply walks out of the room. But this is not where the story ends. This is where the story turns toward the light. The Buddha, like a master physician, having laid out the diagnosis and its cause, now offers the prognosis, and it is a prognosis of profound and radical hope. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. Nirodha is a Pali word meaning cessation, or the ending. It is the truth that there can be an end to dukkha. There can be an end to the restless striving, the inner friction, the unceasing noise. The thirst can be quenched. The fever of the mind can break. This state of cessation, this ultimate peace, is called nirvana. Just as the word dukkha has been misunderstood, the word nirvana has been clouded by even more misconceptions. In the West, it is often imagined as a kind of hazy, heaven-like paradise, a place one goes to after death. Or it is imagined as a state of complete annihilation, a snuffing out of the self into a dull nothingness. Nirvana is neither of these things. It is not a place you go to, and it is not a state of annihilation. It is a state of mind, a psychological reality that is available to us here and now in this very life. The word nirvana literally means to extinguish or to blow out, as one would blow out a candle flame. To understand this, we must ask, what exactly is being extinguished? The teachings tell us that what is extinguished are the three fires that fuel all of our suffering. The first is the fire of greed, the flame of tanha, that insatiable craving for more, the constant grasping for pleasure and existence. The second is the fire of hatred or aversion, the searing flame of anger, resentment, and the desperate pushing away of anything unpleasant. The third, and most fundamental, is the fire of delusion or ignorance, the smoky, bewildering fire of not seeing reality clearly, the very ignorance that causes us to feed the other two fires. Our minds are constantly burning with these fires. They consume our energy, cloud our judgment, and leave us feeling scorched and exhausted. The fire of greed always demands more fuel, leaving us perpetually hungry. The fire of hatred burns us and everyone we direct it towards. The fire of delusion keeps us lost in a thick, confusing smoke. Nirodha, or nirvana, is the cessation of these fires. It is the cooling of this feverish burning. When a fire goes out, where does it go? The question itself is framed incorrectly. A fire is not a thing. It is a process. It is a process of rapid consumption dependent on fuel, heat, and oxygen. When the conditions for the process are no longer present, the fire simply ceases. It doesn't go north or south or into a special fire heaven. It just stops. What is left is not a black hole of nothingness. What is left is stillness. What is left is coolness. What is left is the unburnt reality that was there all along. This is nirvana. It is the end of the process of burning. It is what remains when the compulsive, feverish activity of grasping, hating, and delusion has ceased. So, what does this state feel like? It is described as a state of supreme peace, a peace that is unconditioned. The happiness we normally seek is conditioned. It depends on conditions being a certain way. We feel happy if we get the promotion, if the weather is good, if people like us. As soon as the conditions change, our happiness vanishes. The peace of nirvana is unconditioned. It does not depend on anything external. It is an unshakable peace that can exist even amidst the inevitable ups and downs of life. It is like the deep, silent abyss of the ocean, which remains perfectly still and undisturbed, no matter how turbulent the waves are on the surface. The waves of life sickness, loss, aging, change will still come and go, but our deep inner well-being is no longer dependent on them. It is a state of profound clarity. When the smoke of delusion has cleared, we see things as they truly are for the first time. We see the interconnectedness of all life, the impermanent nature of all things, without the filter of our own desires and fears. This clear seeing brings with it an immense wisdom, the ability to navigate the world with skill and grace. And perhaps most importantly, it is a state of ultimate freedom. It is not the freedom to do whatever we want, which is often just slavery to our impulses. It is freedom from the tyranny of our own reactive mind, freedom from the compulsive push and pull of craving and aversion, freedom from the harsh judgments of the inner critic, freedom from the endless cycle of hope and fear. When we are no longer a slave to the next thought, the next desire, the next wave of anger, we are truly free to respond to life spontaneously, creatively, and with a deep and boundless compassion for all beings, born from the understanding that we all share the same fundamental condition. This third noble truth is the turning point of the entire path. Without it, the first two truths are simply a description of a hopeless prison. The first truth describes the prison cell of dukkha. The second truth explains how we ourselves have locked the door from the inside through our own craving. This would be a counsel of despair. But the third truth points to a window in the cell. It declares that the door is not sealed shut forever. A state of freedom is possible. It shines a light at the end of the tunnel, providing the vital inspiration, faith, and confidence we need to undertake the journey. It gives us a reason why we should put in the effort to understand our minds. It is the promise that the monkey can, in fact, learn to be still. It is the promise that the fire can be cooled. It is the promise that our deep, profound, and lifelong thirst for peace can, in fact, be quenched. It transforms the path from a grim duty into a hopeful pilgrimage. And so, we stand at a crucial juncture. We have received the diagnosis of our illness, dukkha. We have understood its underlying cause, the fires of tanha. And now, we have been given the beautiful and liberating prognosis that a full recovery is possible, a state of cool, clear, and peaceful well-being called nirodha. For any of us in this position, there is only one logical question left to ask the wise physician. It is the most practical and urgent question of all. What must I do? What is the prescription? What is the course of treatment? What is the step-by-step path I must walk to get from this state of burning and unease to that state of lasting peace? That question, and its beautifully detailed answer, constitutes the fourth and final noble truth, the practical roadmap to liberation known as the Noble Eightfold Path. We have arrived at the doorway of practice. The journey so far has been one of deep diagnosis. We have sat with the truth of our own inner friction, our dukkha. We have traced its origins to the deep, restless thirst of the mind, our tanha, and we have been given the most hopeful news imaginable, the truth of nirodha, the truth that a cessation of this friction, a profound and lasting peace called nirvana, is possible. We have asked the wise physician for the prescription, for the treatment plan that can lead us from the fever of our dis-ease to the coolness of well-being. That prescription, that path, that practical, step-by-step guide for living, is the fourth noble truth. It is called the Noble Eightfold Path, or in Pali, Magga. This is the how of the entire teaching. If the first three truths are the diagnosis, cause, and prognosis, the fourth truth is the comprehensive therapeutic regimen. It is crucial to understand from the very beginning what this path is and what it is not. It is not a set of commandments handed down from on high to be followed out of blind faith or fear of punishment. It is not a rigid, linear staircase where you must perfect one step before moving to the next. Rather, imagine it as 8 threads woven together to create a single, strong rope that can pull us from the shores of confusion to the shores of clarity. Or, think of it as a complete program for cultivating a healthy and wholesome life, with each aspect supporting and strengthening all the others. The path is a living, dynamic process of cultivation, a way of training the heart and mind so that we can experience the truth of liberation for ourselves. The path is called the Noble Eightfold Path because it is comprised of 8 interconnected factors. They are right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. At first, this list can seem daunting, just another set of rules to follow. To make it more understandable, we can group these 8 factors into 3 essential categories of training. These are the 3 pillars upon which a life of wisdom and peace is built. The first category of training is ethical conduct, or sila in Pali. This forms the foundation of the entire path. It is concerned with how we behave in the world, how we interact with others and with ourselves. It is about learning to cause no harm. This group includes 3 of the path factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. It asks us to look at the words we use to see if they are kind, truthful, and helpful. It asks us to look at our physical actions to ensure they are compassionate and respectful of all life. And it asks us to look at how we earn our living to make sure our work does not bring harm to others. By cultivating this ethical foundation, we create a life that is free from remorse, guilt, and agitation. We create an external environment of peace, which makes the much more difficult work of training our internal environment possible. You cannot find inner peace if your outer life is in chaos and causing harm. Sila is the act of cleaning and preparing the surgical theater before the delicate operation on the mind can begin. The second category of training is mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the heart of the meditative practice. It is the direct training of the mind, the taming of the monkey. This group includes 3 more path factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right effort is the wholesome energy we bring to the practice, the gentle persistence required to keep going. It is the will to abandon unwholesome states of mind and to cultivate wholesome ones. Right mindfulness is the quality of present moment awareness, the ability to see clearly what is happening both inside and outside of us, without judgment. It is the core skill of paying attention. And right concentration is the ability to gather the scattered energy of the mind and unify it, to bring it to a state of calm, focused stillness. Through this training in samadhi, we learn to calm the waves of the mind so that we can see what lies in its depths. We develop a mind that is stable, clear, and workable, an instrument fit for the task of deep inquiry. The third category of training, and the ultimate fruit of the path, is wisdom, or panya. This is the penetrating insight that cuts through the root of our suffering. This group includes the remaining 2 path factors, and they are placed first in the list for a reason: right view and right intention. Right view is the North Star of the entire path. It is seeing reality as it truly is, understanding the nature of dukkha, its cause, its cessation, and the path that leads to that cessation. It is the cognitive understanding that we strive to realize through direct experience. Right intention is the alignment of our will with this wisdom. It is the intention of renunciation, the intention of goodwill, and the intention of harmlessness. It is the conscious choice to orient our heart and mind away from the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, and toward clarity, kindness, and compassion. These 3 trainings, ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom are not separate. They exist in a beautiful, synergistic relationship, a feedback loop of spiritual growth. A foundation of ethical living, sila, leads to a mind that is calm and unburdened by guilt, which creates the perfect conditions for developing mental discipline, samadhi, a calm, concentrated mind. Samadhi becomes a powerful microscope, capable of seeing reality with profound clarity, which gives rise to true wisdom, panya. And this newfound wisdom, panya, naturally informs our choices and actions, purifying our ethical conduct, sila, even further. It is an upward spiral, with each component lifting the others, leading us progressively and surely toward our goal. Let us return one last time to our metaphor of the wise physician. The Buddha, as the physician, has now given us the complete prescription. It is not a single magic pill, because there is no single cure for a condition so complex. It is a holistic lifestyle regimen designed to restore our entire system to its natural state of health. The ethical conduct of sila is the prescribed diet. It is the guidance to abstain from the junk food of harmful actions and speech that inflame our system, and to nourish ourselves with the whole foods of kindness and integrity. The mental discipline of samadhi is the prescribed physical therapy. It is the set of exercises we must do every day to strengthen our korith muscle of attention and to increase the flexibility and resilience of our mind. And the wisdom of panya is the actual medicine. It is the penetrating insight that directly counteracts the virus of ignorance, healing the illness at its source. It is called the right path, but this should not be mistaken for the perfect path. This is not about becoming a perfect person overnight. It is a path of cultivation, of practice, like learning to play the piano or tending a garden. There will be days when we hit the wrong notes. There will be days when the weeds seem to grow faster than the flowers. The point is not to achieve instant perfection, but to gently, patiently, and persistently orient our lives in a wholesome direction. Every time we choose a kind word over a harsh one, we are walking the path. Every time we catch our mind wandering and gently bring it back to the present moment, we are walking the path. Every time we reflect on our intentions and choose compassion over anger, we are walking the path. It is a journey of 1,000 small steps, not a single giant leap. We now have the map. The complete prescription is in our hands. It shows us where we are going, and the road we must travel to get there. It is a path that integrates every aspect of our lives, our thoughts, our words, our actions, our work, our very way of seeing the world. The logical next step, then, is to begin to walk it, to explore each of these 8 threads in greater detail. And any great structure must be built upon a solid foundation. The entire edifice of this path, the very possibility of liberation, rests upon the clarity of our vision. Therefore, our exploration must begin with the first factor, the one that guides all the others, the lens through which we must learn to see the world. Our journey begins with right view. We begin our walk on the Noble Eightfold Path, and our first step, the very foundation upon which all others rest, is right view. In Pali, this is called sama ditehi. It is placed first in the list because our view, our perspective, our understanding of the world determines everything else. It is the compass that sets the direction for our entire journey. If our view is clouded, confused, or distorted, then no matter how much effort we apply, we will only walk in circles, or worse, wander deeper into the wilderness of our own suffering. But if our view is clear, if it aligns with the true nature of reality, then every step we take will lead us closer to peace. Right view is the difference between having an accurate map of the territory and having a map that mistakenly shows a cliff where there is a bridge, or a safe harbor where there are treacherous rocks. One map leads to safety, the other to disaster. It is essential to understand that right view does not mean adopting a rigid set of beliefs or dogmas that we must accept with blind faith. In fact, the spirit of this path is the very opposite of blind faith. The Buddha famously encouraged a spirit of noble inquiry, a principle often summarized by the phrase ehipassiko, which means come and see for yourself. Right view is not a destination to be believed in, but a lens to be looked through. Initially, it may begin as a working hypothesis, a conceptual framework given to us by the wise physician. We are invited to take this framework and test it against our own direct experience to see if it holds true in the laboratory of our own life. It is a view that is meant to be provisional at first, and then gradually, through mindfulness and contemplation, becomes a lived, embodied understanding. It is the shift from reading the map to actually seeing the landscape with our own eyes. So, what is this landscape that Right View invites us to see? What is the nature of reality that, when seen clearly, leads to the end of suffering? At its core, Right View is the clear seeing of the Four Noble Truths, which we have already explored. It is the understanding that there is dukkha, that it has a cause, that it has an end, and that there is a path to that end. But to see this more deeply, Right View involves penetrating three fundamental characteristics of all conditioned existence. These are known as the three marks of existence. They are impermanence, anicca, unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and not self, anatta. To cultivate Right View is to learn to see these three marks in every aspect of our experience. The first mark is anicca, or impermanence. This is the truth that all things are in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. This is an obvious truth on one level. We see the seasons change, we see our bodies age, we see empires rise and fall. We know intellectually that everything changes. But our emotional and psychological habits have not caught up with this intellectual understanding. We live as if things were permanent. We cling to our youth, our health, our relationships, our possessions, and our moments of happiness as if we could make them last forever. And in this clinging, in this resistance to the natural flow of life, we create immense suffering for ourselves. Right View is learning to see anicca not just in the big, obvious changes, but in the subtle, moment-to-moment flow of experience. It is seeing that every thought arises, lingers for a moment, and vanishes. Every sensation, every feeling, every sound follows this same pattern. The body you have now is not the same body you had 7 years ago. Its cells have been almost entirely replaced. The mind you have now is not the same mind you had 7 seconds ago. You are not a static noun, but a dynamic verb. You are not a thing, but a process, a continuous unfolding. To truly see this is to understand the futility of clinging. It is like trying to build a dam in the middle of a powerful river, or trying to write your name on the surface of the ocean. The struggle itself is the source of the pain. When we see and accept the profound truth of anicca, we begin to relax our grip. We learn to appreciate the beauty of the flower without needing to cut it and possess it. We learn to savor the warmth of the sun without being distressed when a cloud passes. We learn to hold our joys and our sorrows more lightly, knowing that they too are just passing weather in the vast sky of our awareness. This too shall pass. Seeing this deeply is Right View. The second mark is dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. We have already explored this as the first noble truth, the diagnosis of our condition, but seeing it clearly is an essential component of Right View. It is the wisdom that recognizes that any attempt to find lasting, ultimate happiness in things that are, by their nature, impermanent, anicca, is doomed to failure. It is seeing the leaky cup for what it is. When we lack Right View, we blame the water. We think, if only I had a better job, a more loving partner, a bigger house, then I would be happy. We spend our lives chasing different kinds of water to pour into our cup. But Right View allows us to see that the problem is not the water. It is the inherent nature of the cup itself. It recognizes the subtle stress, even in our happiness, the dukkha of change, and the background friction of our conditioned existence. This is not a pessimistic outlook. It is a supremely pragmatic realism. It is the wisdom that prevents us from investing our life's energy in projects that are guaranteed to fail. It steers us away from seeking ultimate refuge in things that can offer only temporary shelter. It gently turns our attention inward toward finding a peace that is not dependent on the ever-changing conditions of the world. The third mark of existence, and perhaps the most challenging and profound aspect of right view, is anatta, or not self. If everything is impermanent and in flux, then where can we find a permanent, unchanging, independent self or soul? The teaching of anatta invites us to look for the self that we so instinctively believe in. Let us investigate. Is your body yourself? If it were truly yours, you should be able to command it. Do not get sick, do not grow old, do not die, but you cannot. The body follows its own natural laws, independent of your wishes. So the body is not a solid self. What about your feelings? Are they yourself? A feeling of joy arises, and you think I am happy. A feeling of sadness arises, and you think I am sad. But the feelings are fleeting, changing with conditions. They come and go like guests in a house. They are not the owner of the house. So feelings are not a solid self. What about your thoughts? Is there a central thinker behind your thoughts? Or are thoughts just processes that arise and cease in awareness, conditioned by countless causes and effects? The teaching of anatta suggests the latter. This does not mean that you do not exist. It means that you do not exist as a separate, isolated, independent entity. The self we believe in is a construct, a story woven together from body, feelings, thoughts, memories, and consciousness, all of which are impermanent and interdependent. A better metaphor is a wave in the ocean. A wave certainly exists. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has unique characteristics, but can you find anything in the wave that is not the ocean? The wave is nothing but ocean, waving. Its identity is temporary, conditional, and completely dependent on the water around it. In the same way, the self is nothing but the universe, selfing. You are not separate from the web of life. You are a temporary expression of it. Seeing this directly is the deepest aspect of right view. It dissolves the root of our ego, clinging. It undermines our selfishness, our fear of death, and our anxious need to protect and defend a phantom self. When we see that we are interconnected with all things, a deep compassion naturally arises. There is a classic Zen story that beautifully illustrates the difference between right view and wrong view in action. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river that was swollen with rain, the current running fast. On the riverbank stood a young woman, beautifully dressed, who was clearly afraid to cross. She asked the monks if they could help her. Now the monks had taken strict vows, one of which was to never have physical contact with a woman. The junior monk immediately thought of this rule and was unsure what to do. The senior monk, however, simply walked over to the woman, bent down, lifted her into his arms, and carried her carefully across the raging river. He set her down gently on the other side. She thanked him profusely, and they went their separate ways. The two monks continued their walk in silence, but the junior monk's mind was a storm. He was agitated, replaying the scene over and over. How could he do that, he thought. He broke a sacred vow. He touched a woman. It's a serious transgression. He walked for hours, his mind churning with judgment, confusion, and indignation. The inner monologue was relentless. Finally, late in the afternoon, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Brother, I have to ask you. We are men of the cloth. We have taken solemn vows to avoid all contact with women. How could you have done what you did back there? How could you lift that woman and carry her in your arms?" The senior monk looked at his younger companion with a calm and compassionate expression. He paused for a moment and then said very gently, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story is a profound teaching on right view. The senior monk embodied right view. He saw the reality of the situation. A fellow being was in distress and needed help. His actions were not dictated by a rigid, abstract rule, but by a clear-seeing wisdom and compassion for the present moment. He did what was necessary, and then he let the moment go completely. His mind was free. He was not clinging to the past event. He understood its impermanence. The junior monk, on the other hand, was trapped in wrong view. He was clinging to a conceptual rule, and his mind used that rule to create a storm of judgment and inner conflict. He was not present to the reality of his journey. He was lost in a mental reenactment of a past event. He was the one who was truly burdened. The senior monk carried the woman physically for a few moments, but the junior monk carried her in his mind for hours, a far heavier load. The junior monk's suffering was entirely self-created, born from a view that was rigid, judgmental, and disconnected from the compassionate reality of the moment. Right view, then, is the practice of learning to set things down. It is the ability to see things as they are, without adding the heavy layers of our own judgments, fears, and desires. It is the clear lens that allows us to distinguish between what is actually happening and the story our mind is telling us about what is happening. By cultivating the ability to see impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and the not-self nature of all things, we stop creating unnecessary burdens for ourselves. We stop carrying the past. We stop being terrified of the future. We learn to live with a new lightness, a new freedom in the open space of the present moment. When our view of the world changes in this profound way, when we begin to see through this lens of clarity, the very intention behind our thoughts and actions must also begin to change. This leads us directly and naturally to the next beautiful thread in the tapestry of the path, right intention. With our compass of right view in hand, we now know the direction of our journey. We have seen the landscape of reality for what it is, a world of constant change, marked by a deep unsatisfactoriness when we cling, and empty of any solid, separate self. Seeing this map clearly is the first step, but a map alone does not move us. We must now take the second step, which is to consciously turn the rudder of our ship, to align our inner world with the wisdom we have begun to see. This is the practice of right intention, or samma sankappa. If right view is the seeing, right intention is the willing. It is the pivotal movement of the heart that says, knowing this, I will now choose a different way. It is the conscious cultivation of the motivations that lead toward peace and the gentle abandonment of those that lead toward suffering. The most powerful way to understand right intention is to think of your mind as a garden. The soil of your mind is fertile, capable of growing anything. Every moment, seeds are being scattered into this garden. They come from what you see, what you hear, what you read, and from the deep storehouse of your own past habits. Some of these are seeds of wholesome states, seeds of kindness, generosity, clarity, and compassion. Others are seeds of unwholesome states, seeds of greed, anger, jealousy, fear, and confusion. We do not always have control over which seeds land in our garden. A harsh word from another person can plant a seed of anger. An advertisement can plant a seed of desire. But as the gardener of your own mind, you have a profound power. You have the power to choose which seeds you will water. When a weed of resentment sprouts, you can choose to water it with repetitive, angry thoughts, allowing it to grow strong and thorny until it chokes out everything else. Or you can notice it, and without judgment, gently withhold the water of your attention. You can choose instead to water a nearby seed of understanding or forgiveness. When a seed of greed is planted, you can water it with fantasies of acquisition and envy. Or you can choose to water a seed of contentment, appreciating what you already have. Right intention is this conscious act of mental horticulture. It is the daily, moment-to-moment practice of tending the garden of the mind, patiently uprooting the weeds of unwholesome thoughts and diligently nurturing the flowers of wholesome ones. It is not about violently ripping the weeds out, which can disturb the soil. It is a gentle but firm process of selective cultivation. The teachings tell us that this cultivation focuses on 3 specific kinds of wholesome intentions, which are the direct antidotes to the 3 poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. The first is the intention of renunciation. For many in the modern world, the word renunciation sounds harsh, suggesting a life of grim deprivation. But in this context, it is a word of great freedom and joy. It does not mean renouncing the world, but renouncing the cause of our suffering, our clinging. It is the intention of letting go. When you are holding a hot piece of coal in your hand, letting it go is not an act of deprivation. It is an act of profound self, care, and intelligence. The intention of renunciation is the wisdom to recognize the hot coals in our minder, resentments, our obsessive desires, our anxieties, our cherished grievances, and the willingness to simply open our hand and let them drop. It is a movement away from the complexity of endless wanting and toward the beautiful simplicity of contentment. It is the choice to find wealth not in having more, but in needing less. It is letting go of the drama, the struggle, and the exhausting effort to control everything, and instead resting in a state of ease and non-attachment. The second wholesome intention is the intention of loving kindness, or goodwill. This is the direct antidote to the poison of hatred, anger, ill will, and aversion. It is the conscious decision to cultivate a heart of warmth, friendliness, and benevolence toward all living beings, without exception. This intention must begin with ourselves. We learn to stop watering the seeds of self-criticism and self-hatred, and instead nurture an attitude of unconditional friendliness toward our own imperfect being. From there, we extend it outwards. When we encounter another person, our habitual tendency might be to judge, to compare, or to find fault. The intention of loving kindness is to consciously shift that habit. It is to silently wish them well. May you be happy. May you be at peace. This practice is a profound rewiring of our emotional circuitry. It does not mean we condone harmful actions or become passive doormats. It simply means we refuse to allow the poison of hatred to take root in our own garden. We recognize that anger burns the person who holds it far more than the person it is directed at. The intention of loving kindness is the choice to fill our own minds with warmth instead of fire. The third wholesome intention is the intention of harmlessness, or compassion. This is the antidote to cruelty and the intention to harm. While loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the heart's response when it encounters suffering. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of pain and the sincere wish for that pain to be alleviated. This intention, like loving kindness, must also include ourselves. It means we stop harming ourselves with destructive behaviors and negative self-talk. It is the intention to be a safe person, a refuge of peace in the world. When we cultivate the intention of harmlessness, we become acutely aware of the consequences of our actions. We see how a careless word can cause a wound, how a thoughtless action can ripple outwards, and we choose, again and again, to align ourselves with that which protects, soothes, and heals. It is the recognition of our deep interconnectedness, the understanding that the suffering of another is, in a very real way, our own suffering. These three intentions of renunciation, of loving kindness, and of harmlessness to the noble thoughts that we are encouraged to nurture. This is a very active process. It means that when we notice our mind drifting into a fantasy of revenge, we gently recognize it, let it go, and intentionally replace it with a thought of goodwill. When we find ourselves lost in a daydream of wanting something we don't have, we gently recognize it, let it go, and intentionally cultivate a feeling of gratitude for what is already present. This is the power that right view gives us. Because we now see that clinging leads to suffering, we can form the intention to let go. Because we now see that hatred is a fire that burns us, we can form the intention to cultivate coolness and kindness. This is where our true power lies. The intention, or the volition, behind an action is the very heart of karma. An action performed with an intention of greed will plant a seed of greed, leading to future suffering. The very same action performed with an intention of generosity will plant a seed of generosity, leading to future happiness. You may not always be able to control the outcome of your actions, but you can always exercise control over the intention from which you act. This is the creative center of your being. By purifying your intentions, you are purifying your world. You become like a skilled carpenter who takes crooked, warped pieces of wood or raw, untrained thoughts and, with patience and skill, planes them, sands them, and straightens them until they can be used to build something beautiful and strong. When we commit to this inner gardening, to this purification of our deepest motivations, a natural and beautiful transformation begins to occur. An inner world that is consistently watered with intentions of kindness, compassion, and clarity will inevitably begin to express itself in the outer world. The first place this transformation becomes evident is in the way we communicate. The quality of our heart directly determines the quality of our voice. A mind that is letting go has no need for deceitful or manipulative speech. A heart filled with loving kindness has no room for harsh or abusive words. A mind dedicated to harmlessness cannot engage in gossip or slander that would hurt another. And so, the inner work of right intention seamlessly prepares the ground for the outer work of our engagement with the world, beginning with the next step on the path, right speech. As we continue on this path, guided by right view and motivated by right intention, we must now deepen our understanding of the very ground we stand on, the very ocean we are sailing. We must look closely at the fundamental nature of reality itself. We have already acknowledged this as part of right view, but now we must go beyond a mere intellectual acceptance. We must explore with our whole being the first great mark of all conditioned existence, the truth of anicca, or impermanence. To truly understand this principle is to hold a key that unlocks a profound freedom. For it is our deep-seated resistance to this simple, universal law that lies at the heart of so much of our struggle, our grief, and our anxiety. On an intellectual level, we all know that things change. We see it everywhere. We see the cycle of day and night, the turning of the seasons, the budding of a flower, and its eventual decay. We look at old photographs and see the undeniable evidence of our own aging, the passage of time etched into our faces. We read history and learn of great empires that rose to magnificent heights only to crumble into dust, their mighty monuments now just ruins for tourists to wander through. On this gross, visible level, impermanence is obvious, but there is a vast difference between acknowledging a fact and truly understanding its implications in the core of our being. Our emotional habits reveal that we live in a state of denial. We form attachments, we build our lives. We seek security as if we could somehow create a permanent island of stability in the midst of a flowing river. We grieve endings as if they were a personal affront, a cosmic mistake, rather than the natural order of things. We cling to moments of joy with a desperate grip, trying to freeze them in time, and in doing so, we crush the life out of them. The practice of seeing anicca invites us to go deeper, to witness impermanence, not just in the world outside, but in the very fabric of our own moment-to-moment experience. Let yourself become aware, for a moment, of your own breath. Notice the sensation of the air entering your nostrils, filling your lungs. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end to that in-breath. And then there is a pause, followed by the ex-breath, which also has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is a constant, rhythmic process of arising and ceasing. You cannot hold onto an in-breath. You cannot save it for later. You must let it go to make space for the next. Your very life depends on this continuous letting go. Now, bring your attention to the sounds around you. A sound appears in the field of your awareness. It lingers for a moment, and then it is gone, replaced by silence or another sound. Try to hold on to the sound that has just passed. You cannot. It exists only in memory. Your thoughts, too, follow this same law. A thought flashes into your mind, unbidden. Where did it come from? It lingers for a second, or a minute, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes. Where does it go? The mind is a waterfall of arising and ceasing thoughts. Our feelings are the same, a wave of happiness, of sadness, of irritation, of peace washes over us. We may try to cling to the pleasant ones and push away the unpleasant ones, but none of them are permanent residents. They are all transient visitors. Our reality is not a solid entity, but a dynamic, flickering process. It is more like a movie than a photograph. To truly see this is to understand that we are living in a flowing river, not a frozen lake. Our suffering in relation to change comes from one place and one place only. Our resistance to this flow. We try to stand still in the middle of the river, and the current batters against us, creating immense friction and stress. We build dams of denial and attachment, hoping to stop the flow, but the pressure only builds until the dam inevitably breaks. The wisdom of Anika teaches us to learn how to swim with the current, to surf the waves of change rather than be crushed by them. There is a timeless story from the ancient East that illustrates this wisdom perfectly. A great and powerful king who had everything a person could desire found himself subject to wild swings of mood. In times of victory and prosperity, he would become arrogant and boastful. In times of failure and hardship, he would fall into a deep and inconsolable despair. He grew tired of this emotional roller coaster and summoned his wisest counselors. He said to them, "I want you to make for me a special ring. In this ring, you must hide a message that has the power to sober me in my moments of greatest triumph and to give me hope in my moments of deepest sorrow. It must be a message that is always true and always relevant." The wise men deliberated for a long time. What single message could be so powerful? Finally, they came to the king and presented him with a simple gold band. The king looked at it but saw no message. "The message is inscribed on the inside," they told him. The king took the ring, and on its inner surface he found 3 short words: "This too shall pass." He looked at the message, and he understood. In a moment of glorious victory, celebrating a great battle won, he glanced at his ring. This too shall pass, and a sense of humility washed over him. He realized his power was temporary, and he should not let pride cloud his judgment. He enjoyed the victory, but held it lightly. Later, when his kingdom was struck by famine and his people were suffering, he fell into despair, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. In his grief, he looked at his ring. This too shall pass, and a wave of solace and resilience entered his heart. He knew that this hardship was not a permanent state, that winter would eventually give way to spring. This simple wisdom gave him the strength to endure and to lead his people through the difficult times with courage. This is the dual gift of understanding impermanence. It is not a pessimistic or morbid truth. It is a profoundly practical and liberating one. On the one hand, it is a call to humility and non-attachment. It reminds us not to cling too tightly to success, to youth, to pleasure, or to people, because all of these things are conditioned and subject to change. This does not mean we cannot love them or enjoy them. In fact, it allows us to love and enjoy them more fully for what they are, without the burden of expecting them to be what they are not, permanent. On the other hand, Anika is a source of immense hope and comfort. It is the guarantee that no pain is forever. No state of suffering is a life sentence. The dark night of the soul will pass. The clouds of grief will eventually part. The grip of anxiety will loosen. This knowledge gives us the resilience to endure life's inevitable difficulties with grace and courage. It reminds us that we are not stuck. Because everything changes, transformation is always possible. We can change our habits. We can heal from our past. We can cultivate a new way of being. Impermanence is the very law that makes growth and liberation possible. Furthermore, it is the truth of impermanence that gives life its preciousness. If we had an infinite amount of time, we would take everything for granted. But because our moments are numbered, because each experience is unique and unrepeatable, it becomes sacred. It calls us to pay attention, to be present, to appreciate the simple miracle of this breath, this conversation, this sunset, because it will never come again in exactly the same way. When we begin to see this truth not just as a concept, but as the living texture of our reality, our struggle with life begins to soften. We stop fighting the river and learn to flow with it. But this deep seeing into impermanence, this understanding that everything we experience, from our bodies to our thoughts, is a fleeting process of arising and ceasing, leads to a profound and unavoidable question. If everything is in flux, if nothing is stable, then what is this I that we hold on to so dearly? What is the self that we believe is navigating this river of change? This inquiry into the nature of the observer, the one who is experiencing this impermanence, leads us directly to the next great mark of existence, the truth of anatta or not. self. Having sailed upon the vast and shifting ocean of impermanence, having felt the truth of anicca in the constant flow of our own experience, we arrive at a question that is both profound and deeply personal. If everything is in a state of flux, if our bodies, our feelings, and our thoughts are all just fleeting processes, then who is the one who is experiencing all of this? What is this I that we feel so intimately, this self that we spend our entire lives trying to protect, promote, and satisfy? Our journey now takes us into the very heart of right view, to the most liberating and often the most misunderstood of the three marks of existence, the truth of anatta, or not, self. Let us be very clear from the outset. The teaching of anatta is not a nihilistic statement that you do not exist. It is not meant to inspire a feeling of fear or cosmic insignificance. Quite the opposite. It is a teaching of radical freedom, an invitation to step out of the small, cramped prison of the ego and into the vast, interconnected reality of all life. It is the key that unlocks the door of our self-imposed confinement. On a conventional, everyday level, of course you exist. You have a name, a history, a personality, a body. You walk, you talk, you eat, you sleep. The teaching of anatta does not deny this relative, conventional reality. It simply asks us to investigate with a gentle and persistent curiosity. Does this self that we call I have any ultimate, solid, independent, and permanent existence? Is there a fixed CEO sitting in the control room of your mind, pulling all the levers? Or is what we call the self something far more mysterious, fluid, and wonderful? To begin this investigation, the Buddha offered a brilliant and practical method. He suggested that we deconstruct our own experience into its component parts to see if we can locate this solid self anywhere. He divided our entire subjective world into 5 categories, or aggregates. These are known in Pali as the 5 khandhas. Let us look through these 5 piles together to see if we can find ourself hiding in any of them. The first aggregate is form, which essentially means our physical body. Is your body yourself? At first glance, it seems so. But let's look closer. Your body is composed entirely of non-body elements. The food you have eaten, the water you have drunk, the air you have breathed, all drawn from the earth and the atmosphere. It is constantly changing, aging, getting sick, healing, all without your ultimate permission. If your body were truly yourself, you could command it, from this day forward, do not age. But you cannot. The body is a biological process that we inhabit, a temporary vessel. It is something we have, not something we are. So, the self cannot be found in the body. The second aggregate is feelings, or sensations. These are the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral tones of our experience. When a pleasant feeling arises, we think, I am happy. When an unpleasant one arises, I am sad. But are you your feelings? A feeling of joy is dependent on certain conditions, and when those conditions change, the joy vanishes. A feeling of anger can flare up and then disappear completely. Feelings are like the weather, constantly shifting and completely beyond our ultimate control. You are not the weather. You are the sky that allows the weather to pass through. So, the self cannot be found in our feelings. The third aggregate is perception. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels. We see a certain collection of colors and shapes, and our perception labels it tree. We hear a sound and label it car. These perceptions are conditioned by our language, our culture, and our past experiences. They are learned processes of interpretation. They are not a core, essential self. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a broad category that includes all of our thoughts, opinions, beliefs, moods, habits, and intentions. This is often where we most strongly identify ourselves. We think, I am my thoughts, I am my beliefs. But look at your thoughts. Where do they come from? They arise and cease, often without any conscious intention. They are conditioned by what you've read, by conversations you've had, by your mood. Your opinions change over time. Your habits can be transformed. These mental formations are the busiest traffic in our minds, but they are not the permanent resident. They are not a solid self. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness. This is the faculty of awareness itself, the simple knowing of an object. There is eye consciousness, which knows sights, ear consciousness, which knows sounds, and so on. One might think, here it is. Myself must be this awareness. But in the Buddhist analysis, even consciousness is a conditioned process. It does not exist independently. Eye consciousness, for example, is completely dependent on both an eye and a visible object. It arises when those two meet and ceases when they part. It is not a monolithic, ever-present background entity, but a flickering, dependent process, arising and ceasing moment by moment. So, having looked through all 5 piles that make up our entire known universe of experience, where is the self? We cannot find it in the body, in feelings, in perceptions, in thoughts, or in consciousness. The profound conclusion is that there is no separate, independent thing to be found. The word self, like the word wave, is a convenient name for a dynamic, interdependent process. This is perfectly illustrated in a famous ancient text called The Questions of King Milinda. The Greco-Indian King Milinda, a sharp and inquisitive ruler, wanted to test the wisdom of a Buddhist sage named Nagasena. The king asked Nagasena, "What is your name, venerable sir?" The sage replied, "I am known as Nagasena, your majesty, but this is just a designation, a name in common use. For in the ultimate sense, there is no permanent person to be found here." The king was delighted, thinking he had caught the sage in a contradiction. "If there is no person," the king challenged, "then who is it that receives your food and robes? Who is it that meditates and studies? Who lives the holy life?" The king then pointed to the magnificent chariot that had brought him to the meeting. He asked, "Venerable sir, what is this chariot? Is the pole the chariot?" "No, your majesty," replied Nagasena. "Are the wheels the chariot?" "No, your majesty." "Is the axle, the ropes, the yoke, or the frame the chariot?" To each question, Nagasena calmly answered, "Number." Then the king pressed, "Is the chariot something other than these parts?" "No, your majesty." The king, triumphant, exclaimed, "Then you are speaking of falsehood. There is no chariot at all." Nagasena then gently turned the question back on the king. "Your majesty, how did you arrive here today?" "In a chariot, of course." "Then please, your majesty, define this chariot for me. You have said it is not the pole, the wheels, or any of its parts. What is it then?" The king was speechless. Nagasena then explained that chariot is simply a convenient name, a conceptual label we apply to a particular collection of parts assembled in a particular way. It has no intrinsic, independent reality apart from its components. In exactly the same way, your majesty, Nagasena concluded, Nagasena is a convenient designation for the collection of these 5 aggregates. But if you search for a permanent, independent person behind them, it cannot be found. When we truly begin to see this, the prison walls of our ego begin to dissolve. We see that the idea of a small, separate, isolated self, fighting for its survival in a hostile world, is a painful illusion. The negative framing of not-self gives way to the beautiful and positive understanding of interbeing. We see that we are not separate from the world. We are a manifestation of it, like a flower that is made only of non-flower elements, like sunlight, soil, and rain. We are made only of non-US elements, our ancestors, our food, the air we breathe, the culture we inhabit, the ideas we've encountered. We inter, tighter, or with the entire cosmos. The freedom this brings is immeasurable. When there is no solid self to defend, we become less reactive to criticism and less addicted to praise. When we see our interconnectedness, a natural compassion for all beings arises, and the fear of death itself loses much of its sting. What we feared losing was the solid, permanent self, but if we see that such a thing never existed in the first place, our relationship with life and death is completely transformed. We see that we are not a drop of water that will be annihilated when it falls into the ocean. We are the entire ocean, expressing itself for a time in the form of a single wave. These profound truths of impermanence and not self are not just philosophical concepts to be debated or believed. They are realities to be seen and experienced directly. But to see something so subtle, our instrument of observation, our mind, must be made calm, stable, and clear. To investigate this process of arising and ceasing, this emptiness of a separate self, we need a practical tool that can steady our attention and allow us to look deeply. This indispensable tool is the heart of mental discipline, the anchor that can hold our mind steady for this profound investigation. It is the practice of meditation, beginning with the most simple and available object of all, the breath. We have now journeyed into the profound and sometimes unsettling truths of reality. We have explored the relentless river of impermanence, anicca, and we have peered into the liberating emptiness of a separate self, the truth of anatta. To contemplate these ideas can feel like standing on shifting ground. The mind, accustomed to solid footing and permanent landmarks, can feel disoriented. If everything is changing and there is no solid I at the center of it all, where can we find refuge? Where can we find a place to stand so that we can see clearly without being swept away by the current? The Buddhist path, in its profound wisdom, offers not just a philosophy, but a practical and tangible tool for this very purpose. To investigate the nature of the mind itself must first be calmed and stabilized. We cannot see our reflection clearly in turbulent water. The practice that allows the silt to settle and the waters to clear is called anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. This is the anchor for the mind. Why the breath? Of all the things we could place our attention on, why this simple, unassuming process? The choice is one of pure genius for several reasons. First, the breath is always with us. From the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, it is our constant companion. We do not need any special equipment, any quiet room, or any particular belief system to access it. It is utterly portable and universally available. Second, the breath is always in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take one that is in the future. To be aware of the sensation of your breathing is, by definition, to be anchored in the here and now. This makes it the perfect antidote to the mind's habitual time traveling, its tendency to get lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. Third, the breath is the natural bridge between the mind and the body. It is an autonomic process that happens on its own, yet we can also control it consciously. This unique quality allows it to be a powerful regulator of our nervous system. A calm, gentle breath encourages a calm, gentle mind, and a calm mind encourages a soft, easy breath. Finally, the breath is a relatively neutral object. Unlike a thought or a memory, which can be heavily charged with emotion, the simple sensation of air moving in and out is usually neutral, making it a safe and stable place to rest our attention. The practice itself is beautifully simple. There is no mystery to it, no complex technique to master. It is an invitation to simply pay attention. Let us walk through the instructions together. Begin by finding a comfortable posture. You can sit on a cushion on the floor, or you can sit upright in a chair. The key is to find a position that is both relaxed and dignified, one that allows your spine to be straight without being rigid. This posture itself embodies the spirit of the practice. Alert, yet at ease. Allow your eyes to gently close, or if you prefer, you can leave them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze toward the floor. Now, bring your attention to the physical sensation of your breathing. Simply notice the feeling of the breath as it enters your body and as it leaves your body. You do not need to change your breathing in any way. Let the body breathe all by itself. Your only task is that of a gentle observer, a curious scientist. To help focus your attention, you might choose to rest your awareness at one particular spot where the sensation is most clear for you. For some, this is at the tip of the nostrils, feeling the subtle coolness of the in-breath and the warmth of the out-breath. For others, it is the sensation of the chest rising and falling. For others still, it is the gentle expansion and contraction of the abdomen. There is no right or wrong place. Simply choose one spot and let your attention rest there, as lightly as a butterfly resting on a flower. Notice the beginning of the in-breath, its entire duration, and its end. Notice the natural pause, and then the beginning of the out-breath, its entire duration, and its end. Just this. Now, inevitably, you will discover the nature of the monkey mind. After a few seconds, or perhaps a few breaths, you will find that your attention is no longer on the breath. It has been carried away by a thought, a memory, a sound, a plan, a worry. This is the most important moment in the practice. Please hear this clearly. Your mind wandering is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are a bad meditator. It is simply the nature of an untrained mind. The goal of this practice is not to have no thoughts. The goal is to notice when you have been carried away by thought and to gently come back. The process of returning is where the real training happens. When you realize your mind has wandered, first, just softly acknowledge where it went. You might silently note, thinking, or planning, or worrying. Do this without any judgment or frustration. Then, and this is the crucial part, you gently, kindly, and lovingly guide your attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. That's it. You might have to do this 10 times in a minute. You might have to do it 100 times in a sitting. It does not matter. Each time you notice your mind has wandered and you gently bring it back, you are strengthening the muscle of your attention. Each return is a success. It is a moment of mindfulness. It is an act of profound patience and compassion for yourself. Imagine your mind as a small boat, and the ocean of life is vast and unpredictable. The thoughts, feelings, and events of your life are the weather. Sometimes the sea is calm and the sun is shining. At other times, a storm of anxiety or anger blows in, and the waves are high and chaotic. The habit of the untrained mind is to be completely at the mercy of this weather, tossed about by every wave, swept far out to sea by every storm, with no sense of direction or control. Mindfulness of the breath is the act of dropping an anchor. When the sailor drops an anchor, it does not stop the storm. The wind may still howl and the rain may still fall. The boat will still rock and sway on the surface of the waves. The anchor's purpose is not to control the ocean. Its purpose is to hold the boat steady in one place, to prevent it from being swept away and lost. In the same way, when we place our attention on the breath, it does not magically stop the bad weather of our thoughts and emotions. The storm of anxiety may still be present. The waves of sadness may still rise and fall. But by anchoring our attention to the present moment reality of the breath, we are no longer swept away by the storm. We can watch the storm from a place of stability. We can feel the boat rocking, but we know we are anchored. The breath becomes our refuge, our safe harbor in the midst of life's inevitable storms. This simple, patient practice bears profound fruit. It cultivates concentration, allowing our scattered mind to become more unified and powerful. It develops mindfulness, the clear-seeing awareness that begins to recognize thoughts as simply thoughts, not as absolute truth. In the space and stillness that this practice creates, we can begin to see for ourselves the truth of anicca in the arising and ceasing of each breath, and the truth of anatta in the impersonal nature of the thoughts that pass through our awareness. We are training ourselves to be present for our own life. Once we have learned to drop this anchor and find a measure of stability in the present moment, we can then begin to widen our field of awareness. We can learn to bring this same gentle, non-judgmental attention to the sensations in our entire body and to the feelings that arise in our heart. Having established a safe and stable home base in the breath, we are now prepared to engage in the work of active cultivation, to open our hearts and nurture the boundless qualities of loving kindness and compassion. The anchor of the breath gives us the courage and the stability to do so. Having found our anchor in the gentle, rhythmic reality of the breath, we have created a space of stillness and stability within ourselves. The practice of mindfulness, anapanasati, is like clearing a plot of land and making the soil fertile. It provides the container, the calm and steady awareness necessary for the next stage of our journey. But a cleared garden is only the beginning. Now we must engage in the active and joyful work of cultivation. We must consciously choose what we want to grow in this inner landscape. This is where we move from the practice of clear seeing to the practice of a warm heart. This is the path of metta, a Pali word most often translated as loving kindness. If mindfulness of the breath is the brain of the practice, metta is its radiant, beating heart. What is this quality of metta? It is one of a group of 4 sublime states of being, and it is perhaps the most fundamental. It is not the sentimental, possessive, or conditional love that we often associate with the word in our daily language. It is not the love that says, I will love you if you meet my needs, or I love this, but I hate that. Metta is an unconditional, boundless, and impartial friendliness. It is a radiant wish for the genuine well-being and happiness of all beings, without exception, without discrimination. The most powerful image for metta is the sun in the sky. The sun shines its warmth down upon the entire world. It does not decide to shine only on the beautiful flowers and withhold its light from the weeds. It does not shine only on the virtuous and shun the wicked. It shines on everyone and everything equally, offering its life-giving warmth without asking for anything in return. To cultivate metta is to learn how to become like the sun, to radiate a heartfelt warmth from the center of our being outwards in all directions. Metta is the supreme antidote to the poisons of anger, hatred, resentment, irritation, and fear. These negative states all share a common quality: contraction. When we are angry or afraid, our body tenses, our mind narrows, and our heart closes like a fist. We create a hard separation between me and you, between us and them. Metta is the opposite. It is a practice of radical expansion. It softens the hard edges of the ego, opens the fist of the heart, and dissolves the illusory barriers that separate us from one another. It is a systematic retraining of our habitual emotional responses, moving from a default of judgment and fear to a new default of friendliness and connection. The practice of cultivating metta, like all things on this path, begins in the most intimate and often most challenging place, with ourselves. There is a profound wisdom in this starting point. You cannot truly offer water to a thirsty person if your own cup is empty. You cannot genuinely wish for others to be happy if you are at war with yourself. Trying to love the world while holding contempt for your own being is an unsustainable and often inauthentic act. It is like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. Therefore, the first and most crucial step in the practice of metta is the development of self-compassion, of a genuine friendship with ourselves. For many of us, especially in a culture that prizes perfectionism and harsh self-criticism, this is the most difficult step of all. Our inner critic is often our most constant companion, a relentless voice pointing out our flaws and failures. The invitation of metta is to begin to soften this inner voice, to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer to a beloved friend, a small child, or a cherished pet who is suffering. The practice is simple and direct. Finding a quiet and comfortable posture, you begin by silently repeating a series of phrases directed toward your own heart. The traditional phrases are, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live with ease. Let us look at what these phrases mean. May I be safe is a wish for safety from both inner and outer harm. It is a wish to be safe from violence and accident, but also from the inner harm of our own destructive thoughts and anxieties. May I be happy is not a wish for fleeting, pleasure-based happiness, but for a deep, authentic, and lasting well-being, a contentment that comes from a peaceful heart. May I be healthy is a wish for the health of both the body and the mind, freedom from physical and mental affliction. And may I live with ease is a beautiful and profound wish. It is the wish to move through the world with less friction, less struggle, less resistance. It is a wish to be free from the deep and subtle suffering of dukkha. You repeat these phrases gently, allowing their meaning to sink into you, not as a demand, but as a loving and sincere prayer offered to your own being. If you find this difficult, that is perfectly normal. Be patient. You can bring to mind an image of yourself as a young, innocent child and direct the phrases to that child. The key is to begin the process of planting these seeds of kindness in the garden of your own mind. Once you have spent some time nurturing this foundation of self-compassion, the practice then expands outward in progressive stages, like the ripples spreading from a pebble dropped into a still pond. First, you bring to mind a benefactor or a dearly loved onnye, close friend, a family member, a respected teacher, someone for whom it is very easy to feel love and gratitude. You hold an image of this person in your mind's eye, and you radiate the same phrases of metta toward them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel the warmth in your own heart as you genuinely wish for their well-being. This stage is like priming a pump. It helps the feeling of metta to flow freely and strongly. The next stage is to extend this goodwill to a neutral person. Bring to mind someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you feel neither strong liking nor disliking. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, a person you see on your daily commute, a neighbor you only know to wave to. You hold this person in your mind and offer them the very same wishes. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. This stage is powerful because it challenges our habit of indifference. It helps us to see the shared humanity in those who exist on the periphery of our lives, to recognize that they too wish for happiness and freedom from suffering, just as we do. The circle of our heart begins to widen. Then comes the great challenge, and the heart of the transformative power of this practice. You bring to mind a difficult person. It is wise to begin with someone who is only mildly irritating or challenging, not a person who has caused you deep trauma. Perhaps it is a frustrating coworker or a critical family member. Holding this person in your mind, you attempt to offer them the same phrases of metta. This can be incredibly difficult. The mind may rebel with anger and resentment. It is crucial to understand what this stage is and what it is not. It is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is not about forcing yourself to forgive and forget. It is not about pretending what they did was okay. This practice is for you. It is an act of profound self-liberation. You are doing it to free your own heart from the corrosive poison of hatred. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The practice of offering metta to a difficult person is the act of taking the antidote yourself. You recognize that their harmful actions likely come from their own deep suffering and confusion. In wishing for them to be happy and free from suffering, you are actually wishing for them to be free from the very causes that make them act in harmful ways. It is a radical act of courage and compassion that unburdens your own heart. Finally, having worked through these specific categories, you break down all the barriers. You imagine your heart as a radiant sun, and you send the light of metta out in all directions, to the front, to the back, to the right, to the left, above and below. You extend it to all beings, without exception. Friends, enemies, and neutral people, humans and animals, beings seen and unseen, near and far, in all realms of existence. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. This final stage cultivates a boundless heart, a universal love that directly counteracts the ego's constant project of creating an us versus them. It dissolves the illusion of separation and connects us to the great web of all life. The power of this quality of heart is perhaps best told in the story of the Buddha and the raging elephant, Nalagiri. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to have him killed. He arranged for the fiercest war elephant in the kingdom, Nalagiri, to be intoxicated with alcohol and then unleashed upon the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. The elephant was a terrifying sight, a massive engine of destruction, trumpeting with rage, trampling everything in its path as it charged directly toward the Buddha. The Buddha's followers panicked, and his loyal attendant, Ananda, tried to stand in front of him to shield him, but the Buddha calmly told Ananda to step aside. He stood perfectly still, his posture relaxed, his face serene, and looked at the charging beast. He did not prepare to fight. He did not prepare to run. Instead, he opened his heart and radiated a powerful, silent, and concentrated wave of pure metta towards the enraged animal. The story says that as Nalagiri entered the field of the Buddha's boundless loving kindness, a miracle occurred. The elephant, which could not be stopped by any physical force, suddenly slowed its charge. Its rage seemed to melt away. Its intoxication vanished. It came to a halt before the Buddha, lowered its massive head, and knelt down in a gesture of peaceful submission. This story is a profound metaphor for our own inner life. The raging elephant, Nalagiri, is our own anger. It is our own fear, our own hatred, our own destructive impulses. When these forces are unleashed within us, they are terrifying and can cause immense harm. Our usual response is to try to fight them with force, to suppress them, or to run away from them. But this story teaches us a different way. It shows us that the most powerful and destructive forces within our own hearts cannot be overcome with violence. They can only be tamed by the radical, disarming, and transformative power of unconditional, loving kindness. Metta is the force that can walk into the heart of our own rage and, with its gentle warmth, calm the storm. By learning to meet our own pain and the pain of the world with this quality of boundless friendliness, we heal ourselves from the inside out. This practice gives us the courage and the tool to work with even the most difficult emotions, especially the fiery energy of anger itself. Having bathed our minds in the gentle, expansive warmth of metta, or loving kindness, we have begun to change the very soil of our inner world. We have planted the seeds of unconditional friendliness, which act as a long-term antidote to the growth of anger and ill will. Metta is the great preventative medicine for the heart. But we live in an imperfect world, and we ourselves are imperfect beings. Despite our best intentions, there will be times when the fire of anger flares up within us. A sudden frustration, a perceived injustice, a hurtful comment before we know it. The heat is rising, our jaw is tight, and our mind is consumed by the blaze. The Buddhist path is not a path of pretending we are saints who never feel anger. It is a deeply practical path that gives us skillful and compassionate tools for working with this powerful and often destructive energy when it arises. This is our guide for what to do when the fire is already burning. To work with anger, we must first understand its nature. The metaphor of fire is perfect. Anger is hot, it is fast, it consumes our clarity and peace of mind, and if left unchecked, it can spread with devastating speed, burning ourselves and those around us. In our ordinary, untrained state, we typically react to this fire in one of two unskillful ways. The first is to pour gasoline on it. This is the way of expression and aggression. Believing that we need to vent or let it out, we give the anger more fuel. We shout, we slam doors. We type furious emails. We rehearse bitter arguments in our minds. For a moment, this can feel powerful, like a release of pressure. But what we are actually doing is strengthening the neural pathways of anger. We are training ourselves to be angrier more often. We are feeding the fire, helping it grow into an inferno that causes immense harm. The second unskillful approach is to try to smother the fire. This is the way of suppression. We feel the anger arise, but we judge it as bad or unspiritual. We deny its existence, swallowing it down, forcing a smile onto our face, pretending everything is fine. This is like putting a heavy lid on a burning pot. The flames may disappear from view, but the fire continues to smolder underneath. This suppressed energy turns into resentment, bitterness, cynicism, and can even manifest as depression or physical illness. We are not extinguishing the fire, we are merely trapping its toxic smoke inside of us, causing deep internal burns. The path of wisdom offers a third way, a middle path between indulgence and suppression. It is the path of mindful transformation. It teaches us not to fight the fire, nor to let it run wild, but to learn how to handle its powerful energy with wisdom and care. This process begins with the practice of mindfulness, the moment we notice the heat beginning to rise. The first step is simply to recognize. Without judgment, without commentary, we simply know anger is present in me. We can even use a soft mental label like anger, or feeling heat. This simple act of recognition is incredibly powerful. It is the moment we stop being the anger and become the one who is aware of the anger. A sliver of space is created. We have interrupted the process of being completely hijacked by the emotion. The second step is to stop. Don't act, don't speak, don't type. We make a conscious choice not to add any more fuel to the fire. We give ourselves a sacred pause. In this pause, we perform the third step. We consciously turn our attention to our anchor, the breath. We feel the air coming in and the air going out. The breath is cool and calming. It is the water that we can begin to gently pour on the flames, not to extinguish them violently, but to cool the intensity of the heat moment by moment. Once a measure of stability has returned, we can take the fourth step. We turn our awareness directly toward the anger, but not toward the story that is feeding it. Instead, we investigate it as a raw, physical sensation in the body. Where do you feel the anger? Is it a tightness in your chest? A burning sensation in your stomach? A clenched feeling in your jaw and fists? Heat rising in your face? We explore these pure sensations with a neutral, scientific curiosity. By focusing on the physical energy, we uncouple it from the mental narrative of who did what to whom. We begin to see anger not as a personal fault, but as an impersonal energy pattern arising and passing away in the body. And as we watch this storm of sensation, we remember the truth of Anika. We know that this too shall pass. The energy will exhaust itself. The cloud will move through the sky. We are not trying to force it away. We are simply allowing it to follow its natural course and dissolve on its own. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful and tender image for this practice. He taught us to cradle our anger. He said that when a mother hears her baby crying, her first instinct is not to get angry at the baby or to ignore it. A good mother stops what she is doing, goes to the baby, and picks it up gently. She holds it in her arms, cradling it with tenderness. She doesn't approve of the crying, but she doesn't reject it either. She simply holds her suffering child and looks deeply to understand what is needed. Is the baby hungry? Is its diaper wet? Is it frightened? Her job is to listen with her heart to the needs being expressed through the cry. He taught that our anger is our crying baby. It is a vulnerable part of us that is suffering and in need of our compassionate attention. So when anger arises, instead of lashing out or suppressing it, we can learn to stop and pick it up with our mindfulness. We cradle it with the non-judgmental tenderness of our awareness. We say to it, "Hello, my little anger. I know you are there. I will take good care of you." We hold it, we breathe with it, and we look deeply into its nature. We ask it, "What are you trying to tell me? What is the pain that is causing you to cry out like this?" This approach completely transforms our relationship with this difficult emotion. We are no longer its victim or its perpetrator. We become its compassionate caretaker. When we look deeply into the heart of our anger, we almost always find that it is a secondary emotion, a protective shield thrown up to cover something more vulnerable. Beneath the hot surface of anger, we often find unacknowledged pain. We find fear, the fear of not being respected, of being abandoned, of losing control. We find a deep sense of being hurt, misunderstood, or unseen. The anger is just the alarm bell, the fire alarm signaling that a more tender part of us is in distress. By learning to listen to the alarm with mindfulness, we can then go to the source of the fire. We can offer our compassion not to the anger itself, but to the underlying pain or fear. This is the process of transformation. We use the mindfulness of our breath to stop the fire from spreading. We use the awareness of our body to experience the anger as pure, impersonal energy. And then, we use the gentle warmth of our compassion, like a mother's embrace, to soothe the hurt child within us that is at the root of the fire. This is not easy. It takes courage and practice, but it is a path that leads away from a life of reactive suffering and toward a life of inner peace and self-mastery. The path is not just about dealing with the difficult emotions, however. It is equally about the active cultivation of joy and brightness. Having learned how to bring the cooling water of compassion to the fire of anger, we can now turn our attention to nurturing a different kind of warmth, the radiant joy that comes from appreciating the happiness of others. As we walk this path of inner cultivation, we have learned to bring a gentle, friendly attention to our own hearts through the practice of metta. We have learned to hold our own difficult emotions, like the fire of anger, with the tenderness of a mother cradling her child. This work of healing and self-compassion is foundational. It creates a ground of safety and warmth within us. But the path of the heart does not end with simply soothing our own pain or wishing others well in a general way. The path also invites us to cultivate states of mind that are radiantly positive, states that actively generate joy and light in our lives. We now turn to one of the most beautiful and perhaps most challenging of these heart practices, the cultivation of mudita, which can be translated as appreciative joy or sympathetic joy. Mudita is the ability to feel genuine, unselfish joy in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. It is the heart's capacity to celebrate. In a world that is often rife with competition and comparison, mudita is a radical act of generosity and wisdom. It is the direct and powerful antidote to the twin poisons of envy and jealousy. Envy is the painful feeling of wanting what someone else has. Jealousy is the fearful feeling of losing what you have to someone else. Both of these states are deeply contracting and painful. They arise from a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, a painful belief system that we can call the scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset is the deeply ingrained, often unconscious belief that happiness, success, love, and recognition are limited resources. It sees life as a zero-sum game. If someone else gets a bigger slice of the pie, my slice must be smaller. If they win, I lose. If they receive praise, it somehow diminishes my own worth. If they are beautiful, talented, or successful, it makes me feel less so. This mindset turns the world into a constant competition, a marketplace of comparison where we are always sizing ourselves up against others, perpetually feeling either superior and arrogant or inferior and resentful. This is a recipe for lifelong suffering. It is a prison we build for ourselves, where the happiness of others feels like a threat, and their good fortune tastes like ashes in our own mouths. Envy is a uniquely painful poison because, unlike anger, which at least provides a momentary illusion of power, envy offers no satisfaction whatsoever. It is a purely self-inflicted wound, a constant gnawing away at our own peace of mind. Mudita is the key that unlocks this prison. It introduces a radically different view of the world, a view we can call the abundance mindset. Mudita understands that happiness is not a finite resource. It is not a pie to be divided. Joy is an infinite, boundless quality. The success of another person takes absolutely nothing away from you. Their happiness does not diminish your potential for happiness. In fact, the opposite is true. Through the practice of mudita, we learn that we can actually tap into their happiness and experience it as our own. We get to enjoy all the good fortune in the world, not just the small sliver that happens to land in our own lap. The heart that cultivates mudita has an inexhaustible source of joy because it learns to delight in the well-being of every being it encounters. There is a classic teaching that illustrates this principle perfectly. Imagine a single small candle burning alone in a vast dark room. Its light is precious, but limited. Now, imagine 1,000 other unlit candles are brought into the room. The first candle can now be used to light the others. As it touches its flame to the wick of the second candle, that candle bursts into light, and then the third, and the fourth, and 100, and 1,000. The question is this: by giving its flame to 1,000 other candles, has the first candle lost any of its own light? Has its flame been diminished in any way? The answer is no. Its own light remains just as bright as it was before. But now, the entire room, which was once dark, is filled with a brilliant, magnificent light. The total amount of light has increased 1,000-fold. This is the nature of mudita. Your heart is that first candle. When you learn to rejoice in the happiness of another, you are sharing your flame. You are lighting another candle with your appreciative joy. This act does not diminish your own capacity for happiness in the slightest. Instead, it contributes to the total sum of joy in the world, and it fills your own life with a brilliant reflected light. The person who cannot feel mudita is like a candle jealously guarding its own small flame in a dark room. afraid that another's light will somehow extinguish its own. The person who cultivates mudita becomes a source of ignition, a joyful participant in the illumination of the entire world. Like metta, mudita is a quality that can be intentionally cultivated through practice. It is a muscle of the heart that we can choose to strengthen. The formal practice begins by bringing to mind someone whose happiness is simple, pure, and non-threatening to our ego. Perhaps it is a dear friend who has just achieved a lifelong dream. Perhaps it is a small child laughing with uninhibited delight. Perhaps it is even a playful puppy chasing a ball with pure, uncomplicated joy. We bring this being to mind, and we intentionally focus on their happiness. We allow ourselves to feel it. We might use a simple phrase, repeated silently in our own heart. Instead of "may you be happy," the phrase of mudita is, "I am so happy that you are happy," or "I rejoice in your good fortune," or simply, "what a wonderful thing." We are not trying to fabricate an emotion, but to create the conditions for a genuine feeling of appreciative joy to arise. We are watering the seed of mudita that already exists within us. From this formal practice, we can then begin to integrate mudita into our daily lives. This is a beautiful practice that can transform our entire experience of the world. We begin to actively look for joy. When we are walking down the street and see a couple holding hands, lost in their own world of affection, we can take a moment to silently rejoice in their love. When we read a news story about someone who has made a scientific breakthrough or created a beautiful piece of art, we can feel a genuine sense of appreciation for their skill and dedication. When we visit a friend's home and see the beautiful garden they have lovingly tended, we can rejoice in their creativity and the beauty they have brought into the world. The world is filled with countless examples of happiness, success, and well-being, both large and small. By training our minds to notice them and celebrate them, we turn our world from a landscape of competition into a vast field for harvesting joy. The most advanced and transformative stage of the practice, of course, is to learn to apply mudita in situations that trigger our envy. This requires great courage and honesty. We begin by noticing the painful feeling of envy when it arises, the contraction in the chest, the bitter taste of resentment. We acknowledge this pain with mindfulness and compassion, as we have learned to do. Then, ever so gently, we can try to shift our perspective. We can reflect that this other person, just like us, wants to be happy. Their success is a fulfillment of this deep, universal wish. We can try, even for a fleeting moment, to offer them a silent wish. "I rejoice in your success. May your happiness continue." This is not easy. It may feel inauthentic at first, but every small attempt to do so begins to loosen the painful knot of envy in our own heart. We are choosing freedom over the self-inflicted pain of resentment. We are choosing the abundance of joy over the poverty of scarcity. Mudita is the heart's great celebration. It is the practice of seeing the good in the world and allowing that goodness to nourish us. It is the ultimate expression of a generous spirit. It balances the heart's capacity for compassion or ability to be with suffering with an equal capacity to be with joy. Together, metta, loving kindness, and mudita, appreciative joy, create a heart that is resilient, warm, and deeply connected. However, to truly master these sublime emotions, to hold both the immense suffering of the world and its boundless joys without being thrown off balance, we need a third quality. We need a stabilizing factor, a quiet center that can hold everything in a state of perfect, unshakable balance. Without this stabilizer, our compassion can lead to burnout and despair, and our joy can become ungrounded and agitated. This great stabilizing force, this calm center of the turning wheel, is the fourth and final of these divine abodes, the practice of equanimity, or upekkha. We have journeyed through the radiant territories of the heart, learning to cultivate the boundless friendliness of metta and the celebratory brightness of mudita, or appreciative joy. These practices infuse our lives with warmth, connection, and happiness. They are the great illuminators of the path. Yet, as we open our hearts more fully to the world, we encounter both its immense beauty and its profound suffering. A heart that feels deeply can be a vulnerable heart. Our compassion can lead us towards sorrow and burnout if we are not careful. Our joy can become agitated and ungrounded. To hold the full spectrum of life's experiences, the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, without being shattered by them, we need a fourth and final quality from this sublime set. We need a stabilizing force, a center of gravity for the soul. This is the quality of upekkha, or equanimity. Upekkha is perhaps the most misunderstood of these four divine abodes. The word is often translated as equanimity, but it can also be thought of as balance, composure, and non-reactivity. Because of its stillness, it is often mistaken for its near enemy, indifference. But the two could not be more different. Indifference is a state of contraction, a cold turning away from life. It is the heart saying, "I don't care, it doesn't matter to me." It is a form of aversion, a shield we erect to protect ourselves from being hurt. Apathy is a state of numbness, of emotional shutdown. Upekkha, on the other hand, is a state of profound openness, warmth, and engagement. It is born not of fear, but of wisdom. The heart of equanimity does not say, "I don't care." It says, "I care deeply, but I will remain balanced and centered regardless of the outcome." It is the ability to be fully present with the entirety of life in all its messy, beautiful, painful, and glorious complexity without being thrown off balance. To understand equanimity in a practical way, we can look at what the teachings call the 8 worldly winds. These are the 8 conditions of life that are constantly blowing upon us, threatening to push us over. They come in 4 pairs of opposites. The first pair is pleasure and pain. Our lives are a constant dance between pleasant sensations and experiences, which we crave and cling to, and unpleasant ones, which we resist and fear. The second pair is gain and loss. This refers to material possessions, wealth, and status. We feel elated when we gain them and devastated when we lose them. The third pair is fame and disrepute. We love to be well known, admired, and spoken of highly. We dread being forgotten, ignored, or having our reputation tarnished. And the final pair is praise and blame. We are addicted to the sweet sound of compliments and deeply wounded by the sting of criticism. Our entire untrained life is often little more than a frantic attempt to navigate these winds. We spend our energy chasing after gain, pleasure, fame, and praise, and desperately trying to run away from loss, pain, disrepute, and blame. We are like a leaf blown about by these ever-changing currents, our inner peace completely dependent on which way the wind is blowing on any given day. This is a state of profound bondage. Upekkha is the practice of finding our footing, of learning to stand firm and steady in the face of all 8 of these winds. It is the development of an inner stability that is not dependent on external conditions. The most powerful metaphor for upekkha is that of a great mountain. Imagine an ancient, massive mountain, its peak reaching into the clouds. All year round, the winds blow against it. The hot winds of praise and pleasure blow from the south. But the mountain is not seduced. The icy winds of blame and loss blow from the north. But the mountain does not shudder or shrink. The fierce gales of fame and gain blow from the east, and the dusty winds of pain and disrepute blow from the west. Sometimes violent storms rage upon its slopes, with thunder and lightning. At other times, the sun beats down upon its rocks. But through it all, the mountain remains unmoved, unshaken. It does not get angry at the wind or cling to the sunshine. It is simply present, vast, stable, and imperturbable. Its deep, quiet strength comes from being utterly grounded in the earth. To cultivate equanimity is to cultivate this mountain-like mind. It is to find that deep inner ground of wisdom so that we can feel all the winds of life blow against us without being uprooted. This wisdom that forms the ground of equanimity is the deep, experiential understanding of the truths we have already explored. It is the clear seeing of anicca, impermanence. The equanimous mind knows that pleasure and pain are fleeting sensations. It knows that praise and blame are just sounds, opinions that arise and pass away. It knows that fame and fortune are temporary conditions. Because it sees that nothing is permanent, it does not cling. It does not build its house on the shifting sands of worldly conditions. The equanimous mind also understands the law of karma. It knows that beings reap what they sow. It understands that we cannot control the actions of others, nor can we ultimately control the outcomes of all situations. We can only control our own intention and our own response. Equanimity is the wisdom to do what we can, to act with as much compassion and skill as possible, and then to let go of our attachment to the results. This quality of upekkha is what allows the other three divine abodes loving kindness, compassion, and appreciative joy to become truly boundless and liberating. Equanimity is their guardian. Without the balance of equanimity, our loving kindness, metta, can become preferential attachment, a clinging to those we love and an exclusion of others. Equanimity allows our love to be truly universal. Without equanimity, our compassion, karuna, can become overwhelming, leading to what is sometimes called idiot compassion helping, in a way that is unskillful or enabling her, leading to burnout and despair as we are drowned by the world's suffering. Equanimity provides the spaciousness and wisdom to care deeply and act effectively without losing our own center. And without equanimity, our appreciative joy, mudita, can become a kind of giddy excitement, a mindless celebration that is still subtly attached to worldly success. Equanimity allows our joy to be calm, spacious, and grounded in a deeper wisdom. Upekkha, then, is the crowning achievement of the heart. It is a state of grace, a serene power that allows us to walk through the world with an open heart and a steady mind. We can still feel joy and we can still feel sorrow. We are not numb, but these feelings no longer own us. We are no longer their slave. We are the calm, spacious awareness in which all of life's experiences can arise and pass away without leaving a stain. We have found the eye of the hurricane, the quiet center of the turning wheel. Having cultivated this profound inner toolkit, the stability of mindfulness, and the four sublime states of the heart, we are now equipped to engage with the world in a new way. We have the internal resources to meet life's challenges with grace and wisdom. The next logical step in our journey is to see how we can apply these powerful tools to the specific situations of our modern lives, starting with one of the most pervasive and often problematic forces we face every day, our relationship with the digital world. Having cultivated the great internal stabilizers of the heart-loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity, we are now better equipped to stand firm in the face of life's winds. We have developed a portable refuge, an inner sanctuary of peace and balance that we can return to at any time. The purpose of developing these inner resources is not to withdraw from the world, but to engage with it more wisely, more skillfully, and more peacefully. Our practice must now move from the meditation cushion into the fabric of our daily lives. And there is perhaps no greater force shaping the fabric of modern life, no wind blowing more insistently upon us than our relationship with our digital technology. Our smartphones, our laptops, our social media feeds, these are the new arenas where the great drama of the human mind plays out. In their own way, they are powerful engines designed to exploit the very mechanisms of suffering we have been exploring. They are masters of creating and feeding tanha, the thirst of the mind. They feed our thirst for sense pleasure with an endless, infinitely scrolling buffet of novel images, sounds, and stimulating information. Every notification, every like, every new message delivers a tiny hit of dopamine, a fleeting pleasure that reinforces the habit of craving and keeps us coming back for more. They also feed our thirst for becoming, for a solid sense of self. Social media platforms are stages upon which we are encouraged to construct and perform an idealized version of ourselves. We carefully curate our photos, our accomplishments, our opinions, creating a digital persona that we then must constantly defend and seek validation for. Our sense of self-worth becomes entangled with the praise and blame of the digital crowd, making us exquisitely vulnerable to the winds of likes and critical comments. And finally, these devices have become our primary tool for feeding the thirst for non-existence, our aversion to unpleasant feelings. The moment we feel a pang of boredom, a touch of loneliness, a hint of anxiety. What is our first, almost unconscious impulse? We reach for our phone. We seek distraction, a way to escape the discomfort of the present moment. Our technology has become our primary means of avoiding our own lives. The result of this constant low-grade engagement is a state of profound distraction. Our attention, our most precious and finite resource, is shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces. Our nervous systems are kept in a chronic state of low-level agitation, always anticipating the next notification, the next demand on our awareness. The monkey mind, which was already restless, is now given a digital playground with an infinite number of branches to swing from, making it more hyperactive than ever before. To bring peace to our lives, we must bring mindfulness to our technology. The practice begins, as it always does, with awareness. The first step is simply to notice the impulse itself. Throughout your day, become curious about the urge to pick up your phone. Feel it as a physical sensation in the body. Is it a restless energy in the hands? A vague feeling of anxiety in the chest? Notice that the impulse often arises unconsciously as a pure habit, without any conscious thought or decision. For years, we have been strengthening this habit without even realizing it. The simple act of noticing the urge is the first step in breaking the spell. The second step is to create what we can call a sacred pause. Between the impulse to reach for the device and the action of picking it up, intentionally create a space. It may only be the space of a single conscious breath. Inhale and feel the breath. Exhale and feel the breath. In that tiny gap of time, you have moved from unconscious reaction to conscious awareness. You have reclaimed your power. In that pause, you can ask a simple question. What is my intention? Am I picking up this tool for a specific wholesome purpose? Or am I simply running away from an uncomfortable feeling? Am I using this device? Or is this habit using me? Sometimes you will have a clear and useful purpose, and you will proceed. Many times, however, you will discover that the impulse is just a blind habit, and in that moment of seeing, you have the freedom to make a different choice. You can choose to stay with the present moment instead of fleeing from it. This leads to the crucial practice of single-tasking. Our culture glorifies multitasking as a sign of efficiency and productivity. But from a mindfulness perspective, multitasking is a myth. What we are actually doing is rapid attention switching, forcing our brain to toggle back and forth between different tasks at high speed. This is incredibly stressful for our nervous system and is profoundly inefficient. It guarantees that we are not giving our full attention to anything. The practice of single-tasking or monotasking is a powerful antidote. It is the simple commitment to do only one thing at a time. When you are writing an email, just write the email. Close all the other tabs, put your phone out of sight. When you are talking with a loved one, just be with them. Give them the precious gift of your full, undivided attention. Let us take the simple act of eating a meal as a powerful field for this practice. Compare two scenarios. In the first, you sit down to eat with your phone beside your plate, scrolling through a news feed or watching a video. You mindlessly lift the food to your mouth, barely tasting it, barely chewing it. Your attention is fragmented, your mind is in a dozen different places, and your body is receiving food but not the nourishment of your presence. The meal is over and you barely remember what you ate. Now, imagine a second scenario. You sit down to the same meal, but you put your phone away, out of reach. Before you begin, you take one conscious breath. You look at the food on your plate, noticing the colors, the shapes, the textures. As you take the first bite, you pay full attention to the flavors and the sensations in your mouth. You chew slowly. You are simply eating. You are fully present for the act of nourishing your body. This meal becomes an act of meditation, an experience of presence, a source of peace. Which of these two scenarios is a richer, more satisfying, more human experience? Beyond these micro practices for individual moments, we can also establish macro practices to create healthier boundaries with our technology. This includes turning off all non-essential notifications, those phantom bells that are constantly pulling us out of our lives. It means setting clear intentions, such as checking email only at specific times of the day, rather than letting it be a constant stream of interruptions. And one of the most powerful practices is to institute a regular digital Sabbath. This is a dedicated and protected period of time where you are completely screen-free. It might be for the first hour of the morning and the last hour before bed. It might be for one entire evening, a week, or even for a full day on the weekend. This is not an act of deprivation. It is an act of luxurious restoration. It is a gift. You give yourself the gift of your own uninterrupted attention, the gift of being present with your family, with nature, with a good book, and most importantly, with the quiet stillness of your own mind. It allows your agitated nervous system to reset and your soul to breathe. Our technology is not inherently good or evil. It is a powerful tool, and like any tool, its effect is determined by the awareness and intention of the person who wields it. Used unconsciously, it becomes a source of endless distraction, anxiety, and disconnection. But used mindfully, with clear intention and compassionate awareness, it can be transformed. We can learn to live in this digital age without losing our inner peace. We can use these tools to connect and to learn without letting them sever our connection to the present moment. This conscious approach to what we consume in the digital realm leads us naturally to a broader inquiry into our relationship with consumption in general, particularly the powerful ideology of materialism and its promise of happiness. We have just explored the challenge of bringing mindfulness to our digital lives, learning to use our powerful tools with intention rather than being used by them. This inquiry into conscious consumption leads us directly into a much larger and more pervasive aspect of our modern world, our deep and often troubled relationship with materialism. We are immersed in a culture that is built upon a single foundational promise, the promise that happiness, contentment, and a solution to our inner feelings of lack can be found through the acquisition of things. This is perhaps the most powerful and seductive story of our time. Every advertisement, every storefront, every lifestyle promoted in the media whispers the same message. You are not enough as you are, but you can be if only you buy this car, wear these clothes, own this house, or take this vacation. It is the great modern promise, and for many, it is the source of a profound and unending cycle of suffering. If we look at this culture of consumerism through the clear lens of the Four Noble Truths, we can see it for what it is, a perfect engine for the creation of dukkha. The first noble truth is the truth of unsatisfactoriness, and the cycle of materialism is its very definition. There is the stress involved in acquiring things, the long hours worked at jobs we may not like, the burden of financial debt, the anxiety of affording the lifestyle we feel we are supposed to have. Then there is the stress of possessing things, the time and energy spent on maintenance, cleaning, organizing, and insuring our possessions. And finally, there is the stress of protecting them, the fear of our belongings being lost, stolen, or damaged. Our things, which promise to bring us freedom and happiness, so often become sources of worry, tying us down and complicating our lives. The second noble truth points to tanha, the thirst of craving, as the cause of this dukkha. The entire industry of modern advertising is a science of creating tanha. It is designed to make you feel dissatisfied with what you have and to generate a powerful craving for what you do not. It works by making you feel that you are lacking something essential. The problem is that the satisfaction provided by a new purchase is, by its very nature, impermanent. This is a well-documented psychological phenomenon known as hedonic adaptation. The initial thrill of a new car, a new phone, or a new piece of clothing fades with remarkable speed. The pleasure wears off, and we return to our baseline level of happiness, or even a lower one, now burdened with a new possession. This leaves us on what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. We are always running, always chasing the next purchase, needing a new and bigger hit of pleasure just to feel the same fleeting satisfaction. We are trying to fill the leaky cup of the self with the water of material possessions, and we are mystified as to why we always end up thirsty. The root of this entire process is the ignorance of anicca, the failure to see that no external, impermanent thing can ever provide a lasting, internal state of peace. The Buddhist path offers a radical and liberating alternative. It suggests that true wealth is not found in external accumulation, but in inner cultivation. The antidote to the sickness of materialism is not enforced poverty or grim asceticism, but the development of wisdom, simplicity, and a deep sense of contentment. The first practical step on this path is learning to clearly distinguish between our needs and our wants. A need is something essential for our well-being: healthy food, clean water, simple shelter, clothing for warmth, and genuine human connection. A want is a desire that is often manufactured by culture, insecurity, boredom, or habit. The practice of mindful consumption involves creating a pause before we buy something. In that pause, we can ask ourselves with gentle honesty, is this a true need, or is this a want? What feeling am I hoping this purchase will give me? Am I feeling bored, lonely, or inadequate? Will this item truly add lasting value to my life, or will it just become more clutter, another thing to manage and worry about? This simple inquiry is not about depriving ourselves. It is about freeing ourselves from the tyranny of compulsive, unconscious wanting. This practice leads to the cultivation of one of the most beautiful and peaceful states of mind, contentment, or in Pali, santuteti. Contentment is not apathetic resignation. It is the joyful and liberating realization that, in this moment, we have enough. It is the end of the frantic search. It is the deep, peaceful feeling of having arrived home. When the mind is no longer constantly agitated by the thirst for more, it can finally rest. A profound sense of lightness and freedom arises. We realize how much of our mental energy, our life force, was being consumed by the constant project of wanting, planning, and acquiring. To be content is to be truly rich, because the richest person is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. This is the inner wealth that the path encourages us to cultivate, a wealth of peace, clarity, and kindness that can never be stolen, can never rust, and will never go out of style. There is an old story that illustrates this truth. There was once a very wealthy man who had spent his entire life accumulating treasures. He owned vast lands, chests filled with gold and jewels, and storehouses overflowing with precious art and furniture. When he was young, each new acquisition brought him a thrill of joy and power. But as he grew older, this joy slowly curdled into a constant, gnawing anxiety. He had to build higher walls and stronger locks to protect his treasures. He hired more and more guards, but then he had to worry about whether the guards themselves were trustworthy. He spent his days in a dark room, endlessly counting his coins and updating his ledgers. He spent his nights sleepless, tossing and turning, terrified of thieves, fires, floods, and changes in the market that could diminish his fortune. He owned beautiful fields, but he never had time to walk in them. He owned magnificent art, but he never had the peace of mind to truly look at it. He had a family, but he was too distracted by his worries to connect with them. His possessions, which he had acquired to serve him, had become his cruel and demanding masters. He was a miserable prisoner in a golden cage of his own making. Not far from this man's estate lived a simple farmer. The farmer had a small plot of land, a modest hut, a few animals, and a loving family. He had just enough to eat and a little extra to share with his neighbors. He woke with the sun and felt a simple joy in the feeling of the earth beneath his feet. He took pleasure in the taste of the fresh vegetables from his garden and the warmth of his small fire at night. He had no need for locks or guards. His wealth was the richness of the present moment, the love of his family, and the peace in his own heart. The story asks us a simple question: which of these two men was truly wealthy? To walk this path of true wealth, we can integrate mindfulness into our acts of consumption. We can begin to ask questions. Where did this product come from? What resources were used to make it? What was the impact on the environment and on the people who produced it? This awareness naturally steers us away from mindless, harmful consumption and toward choices that are more aligned with our values. This connects directly to the practice of right livelihood from the Eightfold Path, the principle of engaging in work that does not cause harm. When our work itself, is a source of meaning and purpose, when we feel that our energy is contributing something positive to the world, our need to find fulfillment through buying things naturally diminishes. A meaningful life is the most powerful antidote to a materialistic one. The great freedom that comes from this practice is the realization that you are already complete. You do not need to add anything to yourself to be worthy of peace and happiness. The peace you are seeking is not in the next purchase. It is in the letting go of the belief that you are incomplete without it. It is the shift from seeking happiness in things to discovering it in your own being. This profound reevaluation of our values, this turning from the external world of objects to the internal world of connection and presence, leads us to consider the most important arena where our values are lived out, our intricate, beautiful, and often challenging relationships with other people. We have journeyed inward to cultivate a garden of peace and stability in our own hearts, and we have explored how to bring this mindfulness to our engagement with the digital world and the pressures of materialism. Now, we turn our attention to the most vital, most rewarding, and often most challenging arena of human life, our relationships with one another. It is in our interactions with our partners, our families, our friends, and our colleagues that our practice is truly tested. Relationships are the crucible in which our delusions and our wisdom are brought into the light. They are the mirror that reflects back to us, with unflinching honesty, the state of our own mind. A person can be a master of silent meditation on a solitary retreat, only to find their peace shattered within moments of a difficult family conversation. Therefore, learning to bring the fruits of our practice or mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom into our relationships is an essential and transformative part of the path. The primary source of suffering in our relationships stems from the same root as all our other suffering: the demands and delusions of the ego, the sense of a separate self. We enter into relationships, often unconsciously, with a list of expectations. We expect others to make us happy, to fill our emptiness, to validate our sense of self, and to behave according to the script we have written for them in our minds. We cling to them, hoping they will be a permanent source of security and pleasure, forgetting the universal truth of anicca, that all people and all relationships are in a constant state of change. We don't see the person standing in front of us in their full, complex, and ever-changing humanity. Instead, we see them through a thick, distorting filter of our own needs, our own past wounds, our own hopes and fears. Then, when they inevitably deviate from our script, when they fail to meet our unspoken expectations, we feel hurt, betrayed, and angry. Most of our conflicts are born from this clash between our ego's rigid demands and the fluid, unpredictable reality of another human being. The path of mindful relationship invites us to a radically different way of being with others, one that is based on presence, acceptance, and genuine connection rather than on expectation and control. The first and most fundamental skill in this practice is the art of deep listening. This sounds simple, but it is one of the rarest gifts we can offer another person. Most of the time, when we think we are listening, we are actually doing something else. We are waiting for our turn to speak. We are formulating our counter-argument. We are judging what the other person is saying and comparing it to our own opinions. We are filtering their words through our own experiences, thinking about how their story relates to us. In short, our attention is on ourselves. Deep listening, which is a form of mindfulness in action, is the practice of setting our own ego aside and offering our full, spacious, non-judgmental attention to another. We listen with only one purpose: to truly understand the other person's experience. This means listening not just to their words, but to the feelings beneath the words. It is listening with our heart. When we practice deep listening, we put down our phone, we turn away from our computer, and we offer our presence. We maintain gentle eye contact. We allow there to be silence without feeling the need to immediately fill it. We ask clarifying questions not to challenge, but to deepen our understanding. To be truly heard, to have someone listen to us without judgment or interruption, is a profound act of healing and validation. Many conflicts dissolve all on their own when one or both people feel that their pain and their perspective have been truly received and understood. Flowing naturally from the practice of deep listening is the practice of right speech, or samavacha. Our speech is one of the most powerful forces we wield in the world. With our words, we can build trust or destroy it, create intimacy or alienation, soothe a wounded heart, or inflict a fresh wound. A mindful person understands this power and uses it with great care. The teachings provide a beautiful and practical filter for our communication, traditionally broken down into 4 key guidelines. First, we practice speaking truthfully and abstaining from falsehood. This is more than just avoiding outright lies. It means speaking with sincerity and authenticity. It means avoiding exaggeration for effect, making promises we can't keep, or presenting a false image of ourselves to win approval. Second, we abstain from slanderous or divisive speech. This is the practice of refusing to use our words as a weapon to poison one person's mind against another. It is the end of harmful gossip and backbiting. Instead, we use our speech to highlight the good in others and to build harmony and community. Third, we abstain from harsh speech. This means letting go of anger, insults, yelling, sarcasm, and any words intended to belittle or cause pain. We recognize that harsh words, once spoken, can never be fully taken back, and their wounds can linger for years. We choose kindness, gentleness, and courtesy as our default mode of communication. Finally, we abstain from idle chatter. This is the practice of avoiding pointless, frivolous talk that simply adds to the background noise of the world and wastes our precious energy. It means speaking with intention, asking ourselves if our words are useful, helpful, and if this is the right and proper time to say them. We can summarize these 4 guidelines with a simple set of questions to ask ourselves before we speak. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial? Is this the right time? We may not always succeed in meeting all 4 of these criteria, but by holding them as our intention, we can radically transform the quality of our communication and therefore our relationships. Let us imagine a common real-life scenario, a disagreement between a couple. In an unskillful, unconscious interaction, as soon as one person expresses a grievance, the other becomes defensive. Voices get louder. They interrupt each other, each one more focused on proving their own point and winning the argument than on resolving the issue. They bring up past mistakes, they use harsh language, and they end up feeling more hurt and disconnected than when they started. Now, let's imagine the same scenario with mindfulness. One person expresses a grievance. The other person feels the familiar heat of anger and defensiveness rising in their chest. But because they have been practicing, they recognize this feeling. They take the sacred pause. They take one conscious breath. Instead of immediately retaliating with their own complaint, they remember the practice of deep listening. They look at their partner and try to hear the pain or fear beneath the angry words. They might say something like, "It sounds like you felt really hurt when I did that. Can you tell me more about it?" They listen without interruption. When it is their turn to speak, they remember right speech. They speak truthfully about their own experience, using I statements instead of you accusations. They speak kindly, without insult or blame. Their intention is not to win, but to understand and reconnect. This one small shift in approach, from a battle of egos to a mindful exploration of suffering, can change the entire dynamic of the relationship, turning a moment of conflict into an opportunity for deeper intimacy and healing. Our relationships are the greatest practice ground. It is here that we can see, in real time, the direct results of our actions. We can experience how an act of deep listening can soothe a troubled heart, and how a moment of right speech can build a bridge of understanding. This immediate feedback loop, this direct experience of cause and effect, is the perfect gateway to understanding a much larger and more profound law that governs our existence. This is the universal law of intentional action and its results, the often misunderstood but deeply empowering teaching of karma. In our exploration of mindful relationships, we saw with immediate clarity how our actions and words create our world from moment to moment. A kind word creates a feeling of warmth and connection. A harsh word creates a feeling of pain and distance. This direct, observable principle of cause and effect is a microcosm of a much larger universal law that governs our entire existence. This is the natural law of karma. Few spiritual concepts have been more widely known in the West, and few have been more profoundly misunderstood. Karma is often thought of as a kind of cosmic justice system, a system of reward and punishment meted out by an unseen force. It is frequently confused with fate or destiny, the idea that our lives are predetermined and we are merely playing out a script. The Buddhist understanding of karma is none of these things. It is a teaching that is not about fate, but about freedom. It is not about punishment, but about responsibility. It is the ultimate statement of our power to shape our own lives. The word karma in the original Pali language literally means action. That is its simple, core meaning. It does not mean the result of the action. The result, or the fruit of the action, is called vipaka. The law of karma, then, is the simple, natural law of action and result. It states that every intentional, volitional action produces a corresponding result. This is not a mystical or moralistic principle. It is presented as a law of nature, as impersonal and as reliable as the law of gravity. If you hold a seed in your hand and release it into fertile soil, it will, under the right conditions, produce a plant. If you hold a stone in your hand and release it, it will fall to the ground. There is no judgment involved. The falling of the stone is not a punishment, and the growing of the plant is not a reward. They are simply the natural consequences of the initial action. In the same way, the law of karma states that actions motivated by certain mental states will naturally lead to corresponding results in our experience. Herein lies the most crucial element of the teaching, the part that makes it so radical and empowering. The Buddha declared, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma." The ethical and karmic weight of an action is not determined by the physical act itself, but by the intention, the volition, the state of mind that motivates the act. This shifts the entire focus of our spiritual life, from obsessing over outer behaviors to purifying our inner world. The same physical act can create vastly different karmic results depending on the intention behind it. Imagine a surgeon who takes a scalpel and cuts into a person's body. Now imagine a mugger who takes a knife and cuts into a person's body. The external action cutting flesh with a sharp blade is similar, but the intention is worlds apart. The surgeon acts with an intention of compassion, of healing, with a desire to remove a disease and restore health. The karma of this action is profoundly wholesome. The mugger acts with an intention of greed and hatred, with a desire to harm and to take what is not theirs. The karma of this action is profoundly unwholesome. The difference is not in the knife, but in the mind that wields it. This principle applies to all of our actions. If you are walking and accidentally step on an insect you did not see, the karmic result is negligible because there was no intention to cause harm. If, however, you see an insect and, out of a moment of irritation or cruelty, you intentionally crush it, you have planted an unwholesome seed of killing in your mind stream. This places the locus of control for our destiny squarely within our own hearts and minds. We may not always be able to control the ultimate outcome of our actions in a complex world, but we can always bring mindfulness and wisdom to the intention that precedes the action. This is the creative moment where we shape our future. The most helpful way to understand this process is through the metaphor of a farmer tending a field. Your mind is the field. Every moment, you are planting seeds in this field through your intentional actions of body, speech, and mind. Every thought you think, every word you speak, every action you take is a seed. An action motivated by generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom is like planting the seed of a sweet mango tree. An action motivated by greed, hatred, and confusion is like planting a seed of a thorny, poisonous weed. The farmer knows that he cannot sow a field with weed seeds and then pray to some higher power to grant him a harvest of mangoes. The law of nature is inexorable. The seed determines the fruit. You reap what you sow. In the same way, we cannot fill our minds and days with intentions of anger, jealousy, and selfishness and expect to harvest a life of peace, joy, and connection. It is an impossibility. The law of karma simply states that Wholesome seeds will eventually ripen into pleasant and happy experiences, and unwholesome seeds will eventually ripen into painful and unhappy experiences. This is not a punishment. It is the natural maturation of the energies we ourselves have set in motion. The conditions of our present life, our temperament, our circumstances, our relationships are the ripened fruits of seeds we have planted in the past, in this life and in previous ones. While we cannot change the seeds that have already been planted, this understanding is not meant to be a cause for resignation or despair. It is in fact a call to empowerment, because the most important truth is this: no matter what kind of harvest you are reaping today, you have, in this very moment, the power to start planting different seeds for the future. You are the farmer of your own life. This leads to the Buddha's profound statement about our relationship to this law. I am the owner of my actions, the heir to my actions, born of my actions, related to my actions, and live supported by my actions. Whatever karma I create, whether good or evil, that I shall inherit. This is not a burden, but the ultimate declaration of our human dignity and agency. It means we are not helpless victims of a chaotic universe or the puppets of a capricious deity. We are the creators of our own experience. Our happiness and our suffering are not random occurrences. They are the direct result of the quality of our own hearts and minds. This is the awesome responsibility and the magnificent opportunity of our human life. This intricate law of cause and effect, where every intentional action ripples out to create a corresponding result, can only operate in a universe that is profoundly interconnected. An action I perform now, born of a thought in my own mind, does not happen in a vacuum. It ripples out through my speech and my body to affect the people and the environment around me, which in turn ripples back to affect my future experiences. This deep understanding of a relational universe where nothing exists in isolation and everything arises in dependence upon everything else is the very essence of the deepest wisdom of the path. It leads us away from a simplistic view of separate things acting upon each other and toward the magnificent and liberating vision of emptiness, or sunyata, not a void of nothingness, but the dynamic, vibrant, and interdependent web of all existence. Our journey has brought us through the great laws of our inner and outer worlds. We have seen how our actions and intentions, through the law of karma, shape our future. This understanding of cause and effect rests upon an even deeper truth, a truth that forms the very summit of wisdom on this path. It is the insight into what is called sunyata, or emptiness. This single word has likely caused more confusion, fear, and misunderstanding than any other in the Buddhist tradition. To the Western ear, emptiness can sound terrifying. It conjures images of a cold, meaningless void, a nihilistic abyss where nothing matters. It can seem like a denial of life itself, but the wisdom of sunyata is the precise opposite of this. It is not a denial of life, but the deepest and most intimate affirmation of it. It is not a statement about nothingness, but a profound insight into the very nature of everything. It is the key to unlocking a boundless sense of connection, compassion, and freedom. To begin to understand emptiness, we must first ask the most important question. Empty of what? Things are not empty of existence. The chair you are sitting on is real. The sound of my voice is real. The feelings in your heart are real. The path does not deny this lived reality. Instead, the teaching states that all things are empty of a separate, independent, and inherent existence. Let us break that down. Things are empty of being separate and isolated from everything else. Things are empty of being independent, of arising on their own without causes and conditions. And things are empty of having a fixed, permanent, unchanging core or essence. This may still sound abstract, so let us explore it through a simple, everyday object. Let us contemplate a single sheet of paper. We hold it in our hands and we call it paper. It seems to be a solid, separate, real thing, but the wisdom of sunyata invites us to look more deeply. If we look with the eyes of insight, we can see a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. This is not poetry, it is a statement of fact. Without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud, which seems so separate from the paper, is in fact a vital part of its existence. If we were to take the cloud out of the paper could not be. Looking again, we can see the sunshine in this sheet of paper. The sun's light is essential for the tree to grow through photosynthesis. Without the energy of the sun, there would be no tree and thus no paper. So the sun is also in the paper. If we look even more deeply, we can see the logger who cut down the tree. We can see the axe he used and the hands that held it. We can see his parents who gave him life and their parents before them. We can see the wheat that grew in a field to make the bread he ate for his lunch, and the soil and the farmer that grew the wheat. We can see the miners who dug the iron ore to make the saw, and the factory workers who assembled the truck that carried the logs to the mill. We can see the person who designed the paper mill, and the person who packaged the paper, and the person who sold it. The entire economy, all of human history, is present in this single sheet of paper. If we were to return any single one of these so-called non-paper elements to its source, if we give the sunshine back to the sun, the rain back to the cloud, the logger back to his parents, the sheet of paper would instantly cease to exist. So, what is this sheet of paper? It is empty of a separate self. It has no independent, isolated existence. Its entire being is composed of the presence of everything else in the cosmos. It inter-is with the sun, the cloud, the earth, and all of human history. This is the true meaning of emptiness. Emptiness is not a void. Emptiness means being full of everything. This insight, that to be empty is to interbe, applies to everything in existence, including ourselves. You too are empty of a separate self. Your being is composed of the sun, the earth, the air, your parents, your ancestors, the food you eat, and the ideas you have learned. You are inextricably woven into the magnificent tapestry of life. There is another classic metaphor that helps us understand the gift of emptiness. Imagine a beautiful ceramic teacup. What is the most essential quality of this teacup? What makes it useful as a cup? Is it the fine clay it is made from? Is it the sturdy handle? Is it the beautiful glaze on its surface? While all these things contribute to its form, the true function of the cup comes from the emptiness inside it. It is the space, the void, the nothingness within its walls that allows it to perform its function, which is to hold tea. If the cup were a solid block of clay with no emptiness inside, it would be useless as a cup. It would be just a lump of ceramic. Its potential, its very usefulness, lies in its emptiness. Our own minds are like this. When our minds are solid, filled to the brim with rigid opinions, fixed beliefs, prejudices, and a hard, unchanging sense of I am right and this is how things are, there is no room for anything new to enter. There is no space for wisdom, for compassion, for genuine connection. Our minds are like a cup that is already full of solid clay. We are useless as vessels for life. The practice of seeing into emptiness is the process of gently emptying this cup. It is the letting go of our rigid ideas, our solid sense of self, so that we can become open, receptive, and available to the richness of reality. An empty mind is not a blank mind. It is a mind that is full of potential, ready to receive the world with freshness and clarity. When this insight into emptiness truly dawns, it brings about a profound and lasting liberation. The experience of alienation and loneliness begins to dissolve. How can we ever be truly alone when we can see that we enter with every leaf on every tree, with every star in the sky? The feeling of being a small, fragile ego struggling against a vast and indifferent universe gives way to a sense of intimate belonging to the whole of life. With this dissolution of the hard boundary between self and other, compassion arises naturally and spontaneously. It is no longer a moral duty we must force ourselves to practice. When we see another person suffering, we understand that their suffering is not separate from our own. We are connected. Their pain is a ripple in the same ocean of being that we are. Wishing for them to be free from suffering is the most natural thing in the world. It is like the left hand instinctively reaching out to soothe a wound on the right hand. They are two parts of the same body. Furthermore, our desperate clinging to things and people begins to relax. If all things are empty of a fixed, inherent essence, what is there to grasp? We can still love people, we can still appreciate beautiful objects, but we do so with a newfound lightness. We understand we are interacting with dynamic processes, not solid permanent things, and our deepest existential fears, particularly the fear of death, begin to lose their power. The ego fears its own annihilation. But if we have seen, through our own deep looking, that there never was a separate, solid self to begin with, what is there to be annihilated? The wave does not fear returning to the ocean, because it knows that it has always been the ocean. It is simply a change of form. This vision of sunyata, of an empty yet completely full and interconnected reality, is the deepest possible seeing. It is the ultimate expression of right view. It is not a bleak and desolate vision, but a vibrant, dynamic, and joyful one. It is the seeing of the universe as a seamless, magnificent dance of interdependence, where every part contains the whole, and the whole is present in every part. To understand the world in this way completely changes how we live from moment to moment. It reveals, with undeniable clarity, that the only time and place this interconnected dance can ever be truly witnessed and experienced is not in the past or the future, but right here in the immediacy and vibrancy of the present moment. This profound understanding of what is naturally prepares us for the art of simply being with what is. And this leads us to the final stage of our journey through the body of this teaching, the practice of living in the river of presence. Our journey has been a long and deep one. We have followed the wise physician's diagnosis of our fundamental unease. We have uncovered its cause in the relentless thirst of the mind. We have seen the promise of a cure, a peace that is available to us all. We have been given the great map of the Eightfold Path to guide us. We have explored the profound truths of our existence, our impermanence, our lack of a separate self, and our radical interconnectedness with all of life. We have learned to anchor the mind with the breath and to cultivate a heart of boundless kindness, joy, and equanimity. We have seen how to bring this wisdom into our modern lives, into our relationship with technology, with material things, and with each other. And now, we arrive at the culmination of all these teachings. We arrive at the place where all the philosophy, all the meditation, and all the cultivation bear their ultimate fruit. We arrive at the art of living itself, the practice of dwelling in the river of presence. For most of our lives, we live as ghosts. We haunt the corridors of the past, and we wander through the imaginary landscapes of the future, but we are rarely ever present in the only place where life actually exists, the here and now. Our bodies are in one place, but our minds are somewhere else entirely. We are physically present at the dinner table with our family, but our mind is replaying a difficult conversation from work. We are walking through a beautiful park, but our mind is consumed with planning the week ahead. We are living in a state of perpetual inner exile. The past is a collection of memories, some sweet, some painful. It is a story we tell ourselves, but it is no longer real. It is like the wake of a boat, a trace of where we have been, but it is not the boat itself. The future is a collection of projections, a tapestry of our hopes and fears. It is a fantasy, a possibility, but it has not yet been born. To live in the past is to be chained to a corpse. To live in the future is to chase a phantom. Both are forms of suffering, because both involve a turning away from the raw, vibrant, and immediate reality of this very moment. The practice of mindfulness, which we began by training on the breath, is not ultimately about becoming a good meditator who can sit still for an hour. The formal practice is the gymnasium. It is where we go to train the muscle of our attention, to strengthen our capacity for presence. The real purpose of this training is to bring that awakened, present moment awareness into every single moment of our lives. This is the art of transforming our entire life into a meditation. This means that when you are washing the dishes, you are not just trying to get the task over with so you can move on to something more important. You are fully present with the act of washing. You feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You feel the smoothness of the ceramic plate and the texture of the sponge. You smell the scent of the soap. You hear the sound of the water. In that moment, washing the dishes is the most important thing in the universe because it is what is happening. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught that if we cannot wash the dishes with mindfulness, we will not be able to drink our tea with mindfulness either. If we are rushing through this moment to get to the next, we will rush through that moment too. The art of living is discovered in the quality of attention we bring to the ordinary, seemingly mundane tasks of our day. When you are walking, you can feel the sensation of your feet making contact with the earth, step after step after step. You can feel the air on your skin and notice the light filtering through the trees. The walk is not just a means to get from one place to another. The walk itself becomes the destination. When you are drinking a cup of tea, you can be fully present with the experience. You notice its color, its warmth, its aroma, its taste. Each sip is a moment of deep connection with the present reality. This is not some esoteric, mystical practice. It is the simple, radical act of showing up for your own life. It is in these ordinary moments that we discover the miracle of being alive, a miracle we so often overlook in our rush to get somewhere else. Imagine yourself sitting on the bank of a great flowing river. The water that has already flowed past you, downstream, is the past. It is gone forever. You can remember it, but you cannot touch it or bring it back. The water that is still upstream, yet to come, is the future. You can anticipate it, but it is not here yet. The only place the river is truly alive, the only place you can feel its cool wetness and its powerful current, is right here, where you are sitting. This present moment is that living, flowing river. Most of us spend our lives on the riverbank, looking either downstream with regret and nostalgia, or looking upstream with anxiety and hope. We are so busy observing the past and future that we never actually get into the water of our own life. The practice of presence is the decision to leave the bank and step into the river. It is to feel the ever-changing current of this moment flowing over you. It is not about trying to stop the river, to hold on to this moment and make it permanent. That would be to deny the truth of anicca. It is not about trying to speed up the river or slow it down. It is simply about being with the flow, moving with it, becoming one with it. This is the ultimate expression of wisdom. The person who is truly present is no longer a separate observer watching the river of life go by. They have become the river itself. This is the great peace that the path offers. It is not a peace that comes from finally solving all our problems or arranging the world to our liking. That is an impossible task. It is a peace that comes from a radical shift in our perspective. It is the peace of letting go of our war with the present moment. It is the realization that peace is not a destination we must struggle to reach at the end of a long and arduous journey. Peace is the path itself. Peace is available in each mindful step, in each conscious breath, in each moment we choose to be fully present for our life, just as it is. This, then, is the culmination of our journey of understanding. The wisdom of the teachings is not meant to be a collection of interesting philosophical ideas to be stored in the intellect. It is meant to be a living truth, embodied and experienced in each moment. By understanding the nature of our mind and the world, and by cultivating the heart of compassion, we arrive at the simple and profound art of being here. This is where all the lines of the path converge. This is where the truth is not just known, but lived. Our long journey together is now drawing to a close. We began in the darkness of a restless night, lost in the inner storm of the anxious mind, feeling tossed about by the relentless waves of thought and emotion. We started as a victim of our own mind, believing its every story, obeying its every fearful command. From that place of confusion, we embarked on a path of discovery. We followed the trail of the wise physician, who first helped us to diagnose our condition, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of dukkha. We then looked with courage at its cause, the insatiable thirst of tanha, the clinging and craving that fuels our discontent. We saw a glimmer of light in the promise that an end to this suffering is possible, the promise of Nirodha, and we were given the great map to that peace, the noble eightfold path. We learned to see the world as it truly is, a flowing river of impermanence, and we began to let go of our search for a solid, separate self, finding instead a deep connection to all of life. We learned to drop the anchor of the breath, to find stability in the present moment, and from that place of calm, we learned to cultivate a heart of boundless kindness, joy, and unshakable balance. We have journeyed from being lost in the storm to becoming the calm, spacious awareness that can hold the storm without being harmed by it. If there is one essential truth to carry with you from this journey, let it be this. Peace is not a destination you must struggle to arrive at. It is not an achievement to be won or a prize to be acquired from the outside world. Peace is not something you get. It is something you return to. It is your most fundamental nature, the silent, spacious awareness that has been here all along, patiently waiting beneath the noise of your thoughts and the turbulence of your emotions. You are not the fleeting clouds of anxiety, anger, or desire that drift through your mind. You are the vast, open, and peaceful sky that holds them all. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains unchanged, unstained, and endlessly spacious. The work of this path is not to create the sky, but simply to recognize that you are the sky and to let the clouds pass without clinging to them. And so, we leave you here, at the beginning of your own path. You have been given the map, you have been given the tools. You do not need anything more than what you already possess in this very moment. Your breath is always with you, a faithful anchor to the calm harbor of the present moment. Whenever you feel lost, you can always come home to the simple sensation of your breathing. The present moment is always here, offering a refuge from the ghosts of the past and the phantoms of the future. The capacity for kindness is always within your heart, ready to be offered to yourself and to the world. You have everything you need. The journey does not end here. It begins now with your very next breath and the one after that. May you walk this path with courage, with patience, and with great compassion for yourself and for all beings. May you discover, in your own direct experience, the profound and unshakable peace that is already and always within you.